Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. I am the living devil, and the Empress advises me to calm down. Chapter 81. Wei Qing was furious. How dare you? Where did this playboy come from? Get lost. Wei Zifu's face was also cold. She frowned deeply and said lightly, "Sir, I already have a crush on someone. Please don't disturb me." She gently pulled the corner of Wei Qing's clothes, indicating that she was ready to leave. After all, Gao Kan didn't look like an ordinary person. Although Yong Yi's power made her fearless, anyone. However, she, who had always been cautious, still didn't want to cause any trouble to Yang Shang. Wei Qing understood his sister's concerns. He glared at Gao Kan fiercely and then left with Wei Zifu. Gao Kan was a scoundrel when he was in Bianjing. With the power of his father Gao Chu, he was lawless in Bianjing. Although Wei Qing was fierce at the moment, he looked like a teenager after all, a young boy, and Gao Yane would certainly not back down. After all, the beauty in front of him was far better than any beauty he had seen in Bianjing. Gao Kan narrowed his eyes, took a sidestep and stopped in front of the two. "Stop, did I let you go?" Wei Qing raised his eyebrows, his face was cold. He had been in the army for a few months and was no longer the groom he used to be. If it weren't for my sister stopping him just now, Gao Kan would have been looking for teeth on the ground. Wei Zifu said coldly, "What are you going to do?" Gao Kan looked at Wei Zifu greedily and said with a smile, "You don't look good in your clothes. How about this, you come with me now, I will buy you a set of clothes comparable to those of a lady from a noble family, and buy you some jewelry." Wei Zifu refused decisively. "No need." Quote. After saying that, she pulled Wei Qing and was about to walk to the other side. It was the first time that Gao Kan had seen someone so cold. He was startled at first, but when he saw Wei Zifu was about to leave, he hurriedly tried to grab Wei Zifu's hand. Wei Qing was furious and could no longer bear it, so he kicked her hard. Gao Kan didn't even touch the corner of Wei Zifu's clothes, but felt a pain in his chest and a huge force. He screamed, flew backwards, and fell heavily to the ground. Honglu Temple. Master Zhu, the young master was beaten. Quote. A servant rushed in hurriedly. Zhu Jia's face changed. Gao Kan was beaten. His eyelids twitched, and he said immediately, "Let's go, take me there." "How is the envoy from Song?" Yong Yi said casually. Lu Gao, the junior secretary of the Honglu Temple, hurriedly said respectfully, "The envoy from Song has been arranged to rest in the Honglu Temple. Does Prime Minister Yang want to see them?" Yong Yi pondered. "No hurry." At this time, a maid ran over breathlessly. "Prime Minister, Miss Wei is in trouble." Yong Yi was stunned, frowned, and his eyes became sharp. What happened to her? Wei Zifu was very important to him in every aspect. Not only was she related to the future Imperial twins, but also in these few months of getting along, he also liked this kind and beautiful girl. The maid hurriedly said, "She is fine, her brother Wei Qing beat the envoy from Song." Quote. Ah, Lu Gao, the Shaoqing of the Honglu Temple next to him, was confused. He had just told Yang Shang that the people of Song stayed in the Honglu Temple obediently. And they were beaten up the next moment. Yong Yi was relieved to hear that Wei Zifu was fine, and said lightly, "Did Wei Qing beat anyone up? Let's go, take me to see." "Yes," the maid hurriedly said. "The government office." County Magistrate Zhang, you also heard clearly, my nephew didn't do anything, but he was beaten up. Zhu Jia frowned, glanced at Gao Kan who was humming with some dissatisfaction, and then said to the county magistrate Zhang Feng in front of him. Zhang Feng looked respectful. "Don't worry, Master Zhu. Your nephew was beaten by these two men. His medical expenses must be borne by both of them. I will definitely give a fair judgment." Wei Qing on the side was a little dissatisfied. "Zhang County Magistrate, it was this playboy who molested my sister first, so I took action. Why should we bear the medical expenses?" Gao Kan sneered. "You hit me so hard that my chest still hurts now." "No, you have to at least compensate me with 100 taels of gold, otherwise you can't leave the yamon today." Zhang Feng frowned on the side, feeling a little dissatisfied. This is his yamon, and this playboy actually turned the tables. However, due to the fact that the two were envoys from the Song dynasty, Zhang Feng had to glare at Wei Qing. "Do you know that you hurt the envoy of the Song dynasty?" If it affects the diplomatic relations between the two countries, can you afford to be punished? Wei Qing and Wei Zifu looked at each other. These people are actually envoys from the Song dynasty. Gao Kan sneered. It's not too late to apologize to this yamon now. In addition, your sister has to go with me. This yamon has taken a fancy to her. Zhu Jia couldn't help but glare at Gao Kan. This playboy still wants to provoke women in the Great Zhou. If his father wasn't Gao Chu, he would have wanted to curse. Zhang Feng's eyelids twitched, but he pretended not to hear this. Wei Qing on the side was furious. You are worthy of it. Wei Zifu pulled Wei Qing's clothes, indicating that he should not say Yong Yi's name casually. This is an envoy from the state of Song. What if he causes trouble for Yong Yi? Wei Qing took a deep breath. He understood his sister's thoughts and said in a deep voice. I am the captain under General Heike. Today's incident was caused by this person first. I will not pay for the medical expenses. Zhang Feng was stunned. The captain under Heike Changji. He glanced at the brother and sister and found that they were dressed ordinary. Although Wei Zifu was dressed cleanly and beautifully, she was not a daughter of a rich family but just an ordinary maid. Although Wei Qing was a captain, he probably had no status or background and was not a real captain. Maybe he was just a sergeant who deliberately pretended to be big outside. Zhang Feng said coldly, General Blacktooth, I respect you. But you did hurt someone. You should pay this money. Hurry up and apologize to him. Zhu Jia on the side raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect that Wei Qing was actually an officer. But he didn't care. He knew very well that as an envoy from Song, these officials in a small country like Zhou would never dare to offend him. So, this county magistrate Zhang would definitely handle this matter well. Wei Qing was so angry that he trembled all over. He didn't expect that the officials of his own Great Zhou would be so biased towards an official from another country. Zhang Feng didn't bother to look at Wei Qing. He had seen many such young people who always shouted unfairness. He urged impatiently, hurry up and apologize to him. If it causes a bigger dispute, you can't afford to offend him. Wei Qing glared at Zhang Feng angrily. Zhang Feng was startled by his eyes, and a surge of anger rose in his heart. This pariah is very stubborn. He snorted coldly. You won't apologize, right? Then take my stick. I want to see if you are not so stubborn. Come here, beat him. Just as the yamon runner next to him picked up the water and fire stick and prepared to start. A voice suddenly sounded. Stop. Everyone was stunned. At the yamon gate, a middle-aged man in a crimson official robe hurried in. He was the one who just shouted. Behind him, a man in gorgeous clothes, handsome face and a smile on his lips walked slowly. Zhang Feng's face changed. Although he didn't know the young man behind him, he knew the man in the official robe in front. He hurriedly said, this subordinate greets Liu Shaoqing. Liu Gao glared at him, ignoring Zhang Feng's flattery, but turned to look at Zhu Jia on the side. Zhu Jia certainly knew this Honglu Temple Shaoqing, and smiled. Liu Shaoqing, this matter actually alarmed you. It's just a small matter. He took it for granted that the junior official of the Honglu Temple in front of him came for him. Gao Kan, who was standing on the side, was even more proud when he saw the junior official of the Honglu Temple of Zhou Kingdom coming. He smiled at Wei Zifu, who was standing in a daze. What do you think? This young master has a good status. If you follow this young master, you will definitely be rich and prosperous, and you will have endless wealth. Wei Zifu, Wei Qing saw Yong Yi coming in, and his mind went blank for a moment. Hearing Gao Kan's words, Wei Zifu was angry and anxious. She hurriedly said to Yong Yi, Prime Minister, I have nothing to do with him. It was him. She hurriedly told Yong Yi everything that happened, for fear that Yong Yi would misunderstand her. Yong Yi didn't care much. He smiled and rubbed Wei Zifu's head. I'm here, I'm not afraid. Quote. Just this one sentence made Wei Zifu burst into tears instantly. She was always afraid of causing trouble for Yong Yi. For her, she cherished her life now. If she caused Yong Yi to hate her, she would be worse off than dead. So she was careful in everything and never dared to cause trouble for Yong Yi. But, she was also wrong. Now that she heard Yong Yi's words, she could no longer hide her inner grievances, and tears flowed down. Wei Zifu wiped her tears quickly and whispered, Prime Minister, did I cry? Yong Yi was stunned and a little amused. This girl paid attention to her image in front of him. He touched Wei Zifu's face. Don't worry, my silly girl will always be beautiful. Quote. Wei Zifu's face turned red, and her heart was pounding when he said, my girl, feeling both shy and happy. Gao Kan on the side was jealous and crazy. This woman had no color for him at all, but she was shy in front of this pretty boy. Prime Minister. This pretty boy has a very special name. The two of them are still flirting in front of him. He snorted coldly. Your woman, right, her brother hurt me. If you don't have 1,000 taels of gold today, don't even think about leaving. Yong Yi didn't even look at him and said lightly. Dash 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 dash. Noisy. Wei Qing, slap your mouth. Wei Qing's eyes lit up and he said immediately. Yes. He had been holding back a lot of anger for a long time, and now seeing Yang with Yi's support, why would he care about this lousy messenger? Wei Qing took a step forward and slapped him hard with all his strength. Snap! Gao Kan screamed, and the whole person was hit and flew up, spinning, and fell hard to the ground, almost knocking out his front teeth. His screams echoed in the government office. It scared Zhu Nai, Zhang Feng, and Gao next to him. They didn't know what had just happened. Lu Gao originally wanted to use his identity to settle the matter first. After all, it was not good for the identity of the Prime Minister to be exposed because of such a thing. Unexpectedly, they fought directly afterwards. Zhang Feng on the side was furious. These people rebelled. This is his county government. If the Shaoqing saw it, wouldn't he think that he couldn't even control a small county government? Zhang Feng held back his anger and said coldly, where did this lowly person come from? How dare he be so presumptuous here? He knew that Wei Qing's courage suddenly grew, and it must have been instigated by this pretty boy. This was almost directed at Yong Yi said. Lu Gao, who was standing next to him, turned green when he heard this. This idiot wants to die. He glared at Zhang Feng, his eyes were bloodshot, and he almost roared, spitting all over Zhang Feng's face. How dare you be rude to Prime Minister Yang? The government office suddenly became quiet. The atmosphere was heavy, weighing on everyone's heart. Prime Minister Yang. Zhang Feng was stunned. He looked at the smiling Yong Yi with a shocked face, and suddenly a chill rushed straight from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. This is a ruthless man who slaughtered dozens of Li Yifu's family and killed dozens of officials above the 5th rank in a month. His legs softened and he knelt down with a plop. Prime Minister, please forgive me. I have been blind and did not recognize a great man. Prime Minister, please spare my life. Zhang Feng was about to cry. You are Prime Minister Yang's woman, you should have said it earlier. If you had said it earlier, how dare I embarrass you? Zhu Jia on the side took a breath and looked at Yong Yi in amazement. This young man turned out to be the powerful Prime Minister of the Great Zhou. Gao Kan, who was covering his swollen face, was also confused. This pretty boy turned out to be the Prime Minister of a country. The other yamon runners trembled and saluted Yong Yi in fear. Yong Yi twitched the corner of his mouth. Is he so notorious now? He glanced at Zhang Feng and smiled. I've taken him away. It seems that the position of county magistrate in Jingdu County is not suitable for you. You should rest at home first. Zhang Feng's face turned pale instantly, as if he had lost his sleep. Yong Yi's words directly made all his decades of hard work go to waste. Zhu Jia on the side was also a little embarrassed. He came here to see Yong Yi this time, but he didn't expect to offend him. He stepped forward. Prime Minister Yang, I am Zhu Jia, the governor of Weiyuan, the Great Song Dynasty. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows. Zhu Jia, this name sounds familiar. Seems to be one of the 6 thieves of the Northern Song Dynasty who is on par with Kai Jing and others. He said lightly, today's incident is a misunderstanding, what do you think? Zhu Jia hurriedly said, it's all a misunderstanding. I will personally take my nephew to the Prime Minister's residence to formally apologize soon. Yong Yi smiled slightly and ignored Zhu Jia, but took Wei Qing and Wei Zifu away. After everyone left, the atmosphere in the yamon suddenly relaxed. Many yamon runners were so nervous that their legs softened and they almost fell down. But they didn't laugh at each other. This is the living devil Yong Yi. Who the hell is not afraid? If you offend other senior officials, at most you will be dismissed. If you offend the living devil, you will have to go on the road with your family. Yang Mansion. Snap. Quote. Wei Zifu covered her buttocks and groaned in pain. Yong Yi withdrew his hand expressionlessly. Do you know you were wrong? Wei Zifu whispered. I know. What's wrong? Yong Yi narrowed his eyes. Wei Zifu whispered. I didn't mention the name of the Prime Minister earlier. Yong Yi nodded. Why not? My name in the Zhou dynasty is not so powerful that it can at least stop the children from crying. Wei Zifu said timidly. I am afraid of causing trouble for the Prime Minister. After the voice fell, Wei Zifu seemed to feel that she had said something wrong, and hurriedly said. I am not saying that the Prime Minister is afraid of trouble, but I don't want to cause trouble for the Prime Minister. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows and resisted the desire to continue to teach. He understood Wei Zifu's thoughts. He pouted. There is no need to think so next time. Your Prime Minister is in Luoyang, and anyone can afford to offend him. Quote. Yes, Prime Minister. Wei Zifu whispered. Yes. Yong Yi nodded slightly. Pout it. Wei Zifu's fair and tender face turned red and she bit her lip. Still hitting, Yong Yi said righteously. I'll teach you a lesson. The next day, Yong Yi woke up refreshed. I taught Wei Zifu a lesson last night, and now Wei Zifu is still lying on the couch. In the hall, Wei Qing said respectfully. Prime Minister. Yong Yi said with a smile. How was it after staying with Heike Chengji for a few months? Wei Qing hurriedly said. Reporting to the Prime Minister, I learned a lot from General Heike. Yong Yi nodded, and suddenly changed the subject. Do you know why the county magistrate was so fierce to the people of my great Zhou yesterday, and so flattering to the envoys of Song? Wei Qing was stunned, and his angular face was full of confusion. In fact, he was also very angry and aggrieved yesterday, but now that Yong Yi asked this question, he didn't know how to answer. After a while, Wei Qing slowly said, perhaps it is because the envoy of Song State has a higher status than us. If he favors us, I am afraid it will cause disputes between the two countries. Yong Yi shook his head, his eyes calm as if entering Wei Qing's eyes. The fundamental reason is that our great Zhou is not strong enough. Because it is not strong enough, so we have so many officials who flatter foreigners. If our great Zhou is invincible, only those foreign envoys will flatter us, why should we be afraid of them? So our great Zhou will become stronger and stronger until no one dares to come to our country to bully us. And the strength of a country is inseparable from the service of talents. Wei Qing was shocked and said hurriedly. Wei Qing will definitely die for the great Zhou. Yong Yi nodded slightly, patted Wei Qing on the shoulder, and said with satisfaction. You must study hard and practice more. In the future, you will definitely have a place in the great Zhou army. Wei Qing was so excited that he couldn't control himself, and his voice trembled. Yes, Prime Minister. He didn't expect Yong Yi to think so highly of him. You know, he was just a groom before. After a while, Wei Qing, who was brainwashed by Yong Yi and had high faith, left Yang Mansion. Another half an hour passed. Prime Minister. 6, 4, 7. 2 people who claim to be envoys from the state of Song have come to visit the Prime Minister. A maid said respectfully. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows. Zhu Jia is here. He smiled slightly. Let them in. Yes, Prime Minister. The maid left. Outside Yang's house. Uncle Zhu, we are not ministers of the state of Zhou, why should we be so flattering to Yong Yi? Gao Kan looked unhappy. The left side of his face was swollen and purple, making him look a little funny. Zhu Jia was a little helpless. He patiently explained. Although we are not afraid of Yong Yi, this time we came here on the orders of the government. If you ruin the government's good deeds, can you bear the punishment? When you see Yong Yi later, you must not cause trouble. Quote. Gao Kan felt aggrieved. However, Zhu Jia had repeatedly warned him and explained the interests involved, so he had to hold back his anger. A maid came out. Prime Minister, please enter the hall. Zhu Jia nodded slightly, then glanced at Gao Kan, and the two walked towards the hall. A moment later, in the hall, this subordinate greets Prime Minister Yang. Zhu Jia smiled and bowed to Yong Yi. He looked fat, and when he smiled, he looked like a smiling tiger, giving people a feeling of smiling on the surface but not on the inside. Yong Yi seemed to be smiling but not on the surface. Master Zhu is too polite. Zhu Jia hurriedly said. Prime Minister, my nephew is usually spoiled. Yesterday, my nephew was new and accidentally provoked Miss Wei, but fortunately it was all a misunderstanding. Now he has realized his mistake and came to apologize to you. He tried to wink at Gao Kan. Gao Kan was so upset that he wanted to vomit blood, but he had to bite the bullet at this time. Prime Minister Yang, I was wrong, please forgive me for my mistakes. Yong Yi did not comment, nor did he look at Gao Kan, but said to Zhu Jia. What is the purpose of Lord Zhu coming to our great Zhou this time? Zhu Jia hurriedly said. This time, I came to ask Prime Minister Yang for the method of preventing smallpox in accordance with the order of the Emperor. Yong Yi smiled. Okay, I will send someone to give Lord Zhu the method of preventing smallpox later. If Lord Zhu is okay, go back first. You. Before Zhu Jia could respond, Gao Kan on the side was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. They had been in for a long time, and this fool didn't even prepare a chair for them. He just apologized, and this guy ignored him. Now they are being chased away after just a few words. If this guy was in Song, would he, Gao Yane, be able to bear this? Zhu Jia's eyelids twitched wildly. He was also very angry. How could this guy be so disrespectful? He took a deep breath and said with a fake smile. Prime Minister, this time, I have another matter to discuss with His Majesty. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows. He knew that the envoy from Song would never come just for a method to prevent smallpox. After all, the calendar for preventing smallpox has long been half public. The people of Song can find it with a little effort. Please tell me, Lord Zhu. It's the same whether you tell me or His Majesty, I can convey it on your behalf. Yong Yi said with a smile. Zhu Jia's face twitched. He didn't expect that he, as an envoy of the Song dynasty, couldn't even see the emperor of the Zhou dynasty. He was a little angry, but pretended to be calm. The queen of the Song dynasty passed away a few years ago, and the position of the queen was vacant. The emperor heard that the third princess of the Song dynasty was well educated, virtuous and kind, so he intended to marry the third princess as the queen of the Song dynasty. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows. The emperor of the Song dynasty wanted to marry Wu Mingyu. Seeing that Yong Yi didn't speak, Zhu Jia said again. I heard that your country has developed a new type of explosives, and our Song dynasty has a lot of experience in firearms. If the two countries become relatives, our Song dynasty can send people to study explosives with your country, so that we can exchange what we have in firearms, which is extremely beneficial to both our countries. Yong Yi's mouth twitched. Good guy. This Zhu Jia beat around the bush for a long time. Another marriage, and they have experience. So they were waiting here. The marriage was fake, they wanted the explosives technology of their great Zhou. Yong Yi glanced at Zhu Jia speechlessly. How big a hole must the emperor of Song have in his head to think of such a good thing? He wanted to marry a princess, and he also wanted explosives. He was not used to being high and mighty, so his head was crazy. The great Zhou today is not the Zhou kingdom in the past. He was a little hesitant about whether to pit the Song kingdom. After all, this could turn into an international dispute. Now it seems that this Song kingdom is completely impossible to become an ally of his great Zhou. Gao Kan on the side couldn't help but say. My great Song official hasn't taken a queen for many years. Now that your princess marries there and can become the queen of my great Song, it is her honor. Zhu Dong also nodded slightly. He didn't think there was any problem at all. His dignified great Song, known as the richest country in the Central Plains, is also a top country in the Central Plains. Even if Zhou defeated the Jurchen barbarians, so what? For a mere princess to become the queen of Song, that would be a great honor. Yong Yi was unmoved and just smiled. I will tell your majesty about this. Zhu Jia nodded. Anyway, his mission was to bring the emperor's will. Yong Yi changed the subject and suddenly smiled. Lord Zhu, I heard that Song is the richest country in the Central Plains. Zhu Jia was stunned. He didn't expect Yong Yi to suddenly mention the economy of Song. Zhu Jia smiled faintly, quite proud. Prime Minister Yang is right. Our Song is prosperous in commerce, and the capital Bianjing is rich in water conservancy. Merchants from all walks of life come and go. In the past few years, our Song had an annual income of 160 million guan. Looking around the world, it is difficult to find a rival. Yong Yi smiled. It's good to have money, it's good to have money. He smiled immediately. I heard that the largest market in the Central Plains is in Song. I have a batch of treasures in my hand and want to sell them. I wonder if Lord Zhu can help me with this. Zhu Jia was stunned. Yong Yi has treasures to sell. He was a little curious. I wonder what treasures Yang Shang is talking about. Gao Kan on the side was also a little curious. Yong Yi smiled and took out a crystal clear glass cup from his arms. He won 100 glassware in the lottery. He has been collecting them all the time. Zhu Jia and Gao Kan took a look, took a breath, and looked shocked. It turned out to be a glass cup. Although they are a little ignorant, they still know the goods. Such a small glass cup can be sold at a sky-high price in the Song dynasty. Even presenting it to His Majesty the Emperor is a great achievement. Zhu Jia looked at Yang with greed. The cup in Yong Yi's hand, his voice trembled a little. Prime Minister Yang, how are you going to sell this cup? Gao Kan on the side looked greedy and licked his lips involuntarily. You know, glass is a rare thing. Especially the clear glass in Yong Yi's hand, it can be sold at a sky-high price. Yong Yi did not answer Zhu Jia's words, but took out 5 identical cups. I have some glass cups like this here. Hiss. Zhu Jia almost popped his eyes out. There are still some. Gao Kan on the side was also shocked, even though he had only heard that the official had a set of glass cups. But he had never seen it. And now he saw this priceless thing with his own eyes. After a while, Zhu Jia swallowed his saliva. Prime Minister Yang, what do you mean? Yong Yi coughed lightly. I have a batch of glass in my hand. This is an heirloom from my ancestors. Quote, I want to exchange them for a good price in Song State. Zhu Jia's breathing was a little rapid. This Yong Yi wants to cooperate with him. Then can he also make money from it? He immediately said, Prime Minister Yang, leave this matter to me. Gao Kan on the side was anxious. Such a great thing, how can Zhu Jia take it alone? He didn't care about the previous conflict with Yong Yi, and flattered him. Prime Minister Yang, my father is the Taiwei Gao of the Song dynasty. If this glass can be handed over to my father, it will definitely be sold to Prime Minister Yang for a good price. Zhu Jia was anxious and angry. I should have known not to bring this idiot here. This guy is trying to steal his business. Yong Yi seemed to be unable to see the greedy eyes of Zhu Jia and the others. He smiled. No need to fight, this batch of glass can be handed over to you two to sell together. Quote, I can guarantee that this batch of colored glaze is the most precious treasure in the world, and there is only this batch. I have marked the price of each colored glaze. After you get it, how much you want to sell it for is your ability, and it has nothing to do with me. Of course, the premise is that you can eat this batch of colored glaze. Zhu Zhen and Gao Kan were overjoyed when they heard it. Isn't this what they want? As long as Yong Yi sells the colored glaze to them, they can sell it at a sky-high price. They can also make a lot of money. At that moment, the two nodded repeatedly. Please rest assured, Prime Minister Yang. Driven by the huge interests, even Gao Kan now looks at Yong Yi more favorably. Although Yong Yi made him quite unhappy, in front of money, these are nothing. Yong Yi immediately asked people to bring a few boxes. In front of Zhu Jia and Gao Kan, he opened the boxes. After the boxes were opened, the glassware inside was revealed. These glass products are all top-notch craftsmanship and look pleasing to the eye. Although to Yong Yi, it is just a batch of glass. But to Zhu Jia and Gao Kan, it is simply a priceless treasure. Hiss. The two of them took a breath and their eyes almost popped out of shock. They thought that the batch Yong Yi mentioned should be only a dozen. But now it seems that there are at least hundreds of them. And each of them is of top quality, a real rare treasure. They even suspect that the glass cups collected by the officials are also inferior products compared to the batch of glass in front of them. After all, this batch of glass is too transparent. Yong Yi looked at the two with a smile. I have 100 pieces of colored glassware here. Looking at the world, I am afraid I am the only one who has 100 pieces. This batch of colored glass is truly unique. How about this? One piece of colored glass is 400,000 strings of cash, and there are some large pieces of colored glassware, so the total is 50 million strings of cash for you, you can take them all. Zhu Jia and Gao Kan were stunned, with a look of shock on their faces. 50 million strings of cash. They took a breath of cold air, their scalps tingling. This Yong Yi simply asked for a sky-high price. Zhu Jia swallowed his saliva and smiled bitterly. A full 50 million strings of cash. Prime Minister Yang, I am afraid we can't take out this amount of money. How about I take 5 pieces first and help you sell them? Yong Yi raised his sword eyebrows and smiled. These are 100 pieces of rare colored glass. Do you think each piece can be sold for more than 400,000 strings of cash? Zhu Jia took a breath and gritted his teeth. Such a rare treasure is worth a fortune. Of course, 400,000 strings of cash can be sold. Quote. Yong Yi nodded. That's it. I just find it troublesome, so I packaged it for you. Otherwise, I will sell 100 pieces of colored glass separately to Qin, Han, Tang, Ming and those grassland countries. The unit price of each piece is probably far more than 400,000. You are taking advantage of it. Do you know? Zhu Zhen and Gao Kan looked at each other. They certainly knew this truth. After all, this is colored glass. The only colored glass in the world. Each piece of colored glass is unique and cannot be copied at all. Because of this, a set of colored glass cups will be more valuable. Yong Yi was absolutely right. These nearly 100 pieces of colored glaze, if sold separately to various countries, would eventually be able to sell for more than 80 million guan. Now, as long as they can collect 50 million guan, they can make 30 million guan in the end. A full 30 million guan. Gao Kan and Zhu Jia were so happy. The peak period of the Song dynasty was only 160 million guan a year. That was the peak, and it was only a flash in the pan. The normal tax revenue was only about 100 million. And now they can make 30 million. 1/3 of the tax revenue. Selling this is a big fortune. Besides, colored glaze is not a problem to sell. It's just that Yong Yi insisted on selling it for 50 million guan in one go, which gave them a headache. They can't afford it. Zhu Jia licked his lips, looked at the colored glaze cup greedily, and then reluctantly turned his eyes to Yong Yi. Prime Minister Yang, I know that 50 million guan is not a high price for this batch of colored glaze. But we really can't afford 5,000 guan. Quote. Gao Kan nodded repeatedly, looking at a batch of colored glaze greedily. If he missed this opportunity, he would regret it for the rest of his life. Yong Yi took in the expressions of the two people. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly. The fish took the bait. Yong Yi said casually, if you can't take out 50 million strings of cash, I can't give it to you. But, just because you can't take it out doesn't mean that the dignitaries of Song can't take it out. Can't you ask them to raise funds together to raise the money? This is a business that is sure to make a profit. If it weren't for the fact that I am busy with many things every day and the treasury is in urgent need of money, how could I give it to you? Zhu Jia and Gao Kan were enlightened by Yong Yi's words, and their eyes lit up. That's right, they couldn't come up with such a large sum of money, but that didn't mean that the powerful and wealthy merchants in Bianjing couldn't come up with it. At most, they could share some of the profits with those powerful and wealthy people. In this way, everyone would make money. Although it would be less than if the two of them shared the money, but if they didn't raise funds, they couldn't get these colored glazes from Yi at all. Zhu Jia gritted his teeth. Prime Minister Yang, let's go back and discuss it. After all, 50 million guan is not a small amount. Gao Kan swallowed his saliva and nodded repeatedly. He had a sly look in his eyes, and his eyes could not leave the colored glaze in front of him. Yong Yi smiled slightly. Okay. He immediately picked up 3 pieces of colored glaze and placed them in front of the two of them. You can take these 3 pieces back to Song for the time being. Lest the nobles of Song think that Yang is just bragging. Zhu Jia and Gao Kan were stunned and looked at Yong Yi in shock. They didn't expect Yong Yi to be so bold and not afraid that they would run away. Zhu Jia took a breath and gritted his teeth. Don't worry, Prime Minister Yang, I will never let you down. These 3 pieces are worth millions of guan. It would be a lie to say that he is not tempted. But there are still 100 pieces, so we can't lose the big picture for the small. After an incense stick, Zhu Jia and Gao Kan carefully packed the 3 pieces of glass and left Yang's house. Yong Yi smiled and returned to Fang Chen. Wei Zifu was still lying on the couch, but she had woken up. Seeing Yong Yi coming over, she hurriedly said, 18%. She blushed a little. I am just a little tired, so I got up to serve you. Yong Yi said with a smile. Just lie down if you are tired, why get up? You don't need to get up, you can serve me. As he said that, he began to prepare to untie his belt. Wei Zifu's fair and tender face turned red, her rosy little mouth slightly opened, and her beautiful eyes were full of shock. The Prime Minister didn't sleep much last night, and now this is too much. Dong dong dong. There was a knock on the door. Yong Yi was stunned. The voice of the maid outside came. Prime Minister, His Majesty invites you to the palace. Yong Yi's mouth twitched. Well, this is too coincidental. He pinched Wei Zifu's face. Wait until I come back. Wei Zifu nodded shyly. Qianyuan Palace. I heard that you had a conflict with the envoy of Song. Wu Jiao raised her eyebrows and looked at Yong Yi with some curiosity. The ministers beside him looked at each other in bewilderment. This Song envoy dared to provoke the living devil, he is really ignorant and fearless. Yong Yi said with a smile. It's just a misunderstanding. Wu Jiao smiled. How come I heard that you dismissed a county magistrate for a woman and had Gao Chu's son beaten? Yong Yi said seriously. Slander, this is slander, now the envoys of Song treat me as well as their own father. Xu Jingzong and others couldn't help laughing. Wu Jiao said unhappily. It seems that you have solved it. I was thinking of supporting you, but now it seems that a few envoys from Song should not be enough to tie your hands and feet. Yong Yi was stunned. He didn't expect Wu Jiao to come to support him. He felt warm in his heart and smiled. Of course, I am your Majesty's right-handed minister, how can I not deal with a few idiots from Song? Oh, Wu Shi thought, you are not going to use a vicious plan to harm them again. Everyone turned their eyes to Yong Yi, with strange expressions. Yong Yi said righteously, Your Majesty, how could I be such a person? Wei Yuanzhang stroked his beard and teased. Minister Yang is a well-known living devil. These envoys from the Song state are so arrogant. If you don't let them suffer a little, you are not Yang Shangye. He is old, and Yang Shangye is obviously a joke. Everyone couldn't help laughing. Yong Yi coughed lightly, with an innocent look. You really misunderstood me. I really didn't intend to trick them, but to trick the dignitaries of the entire Song state. Silence. Everyone stopped laughing, and looked at Yong Yi with a rich face. Trick the dignitaries of the Song state. Wu Jiao was startled, with a strange look in her eyes. She hesitated for a while. Why are you setting up a trap for the Song state? Everyone also looked at Yong Yi. Yong Yi said sternly, Your Majesty, the Song state is really shameless. He then recounted the words of Zhu Jia and others. Everyone was stunned when they heard it. The Song state actually set its sights on them. Wu Jiao frowned. The Emperor Zhao Ji of the Song state is really hilarious. He is only 40 years old, and he still dreams of marrying my great Zhou princess. Is he still living in the dream of my great Zhou or the small country at the beginning? As for explosives, that is the core secret of my great Zhou. Even powerful countries like Qin, Han, Tang, and Ming have not mentioned it. What qualifications does he have? Yong Yi said with a smile. Perhaps he has been immersed in his own economic prosperity and has been high and mighty for too long, forgetting that my great Zhou is no longer something he can control. In his eyes, my great Zhou is probably far inferior to his Song state, so he made such an arrogant and rude request. Wu Jiao sneered. Such people are not worthy of my great Zhou to establish diplomatic relations. We should give them a good trick. My great Zhou is no longer the great Zhou of the past. If Song state wants to take action, my great Zhou will directly go to war. Quote. The current Empress is also full of confidence. The weak great Zhou could even destroy the Qing kingdom, let alone the great Zhou that has annexed the Qing kingdom. Even if there is a conflict with the Song kingdom, she is not afraid. Wu Jiao vented her inner resentment and then turned to Ti. Yang Qing, you said that you set a trap for the powerful people in the Song kingdom. What are you going to do? Everyone's eyes fell on Yong Yi, and they were all a little curious. They knew that all the strategies used by this living devil were vicious. Yong Yi smiled. I took 100 pieces of colored glass utensils and asked Zhu Jia and Gao Kan to take out 50 million strings of cash and take them away. Colored glass. Everyone was stunned, looking at Yong Yi in amazement, and took a breath of cold air. This thing, Yang Shang actually has it. Wei Yuanzhang next to him widened his eyes and looked shocked. Minister Yang, 100 pieces of colored glaze. Are you serious? Yong Yi said seriously. Of course it's true, otherwise Zhu Jia and Gao Kan are not fools, why would they spend money to buy my colored glaze? Wu Jiao pursed her lips, and there was still shock in her phoenix eyes. 50 million strings of cash. Can they take it out? Yong Yi spread his hands. Of course not. So, I asked them to go back and find the dignitaries of the Song dynasty to raise funds together. I think the dignitaries of Bianjing, who is known as the richest country in the world, should be able to come up with 500,000 yuan by mortgaging their houses and land. Xu Jingzong on the side sighed a little. Minister Yang, you are confused. 100 pieces of rare colored glaze, sold separately to various countries, can be sold at a price even higher than 50 million strings of cash. How can you cheat them? You are clearly making money for them. Everyone nodded slightly. Isn't this a clear gift of business? Where did the scam come from? Wu Jiao frowned. She looked at Yong Yi with a strange look. Wait, there is a question. Yong Yi still had a smile on his face. Your Majesty, please tell me. Wu Jiao pursed her lips, her dark eyes full of curiosity. I heard that your family is ordinary, your ancestors have no prominent figures, and your parents left you early, so you should not have so many colored glass, a full 100 pieces of colored glass. This is a wealth that can rival a country. Where did you get it? Everyone in the hall was stunned when he heard it. Yes, they were just stunned by the words of 100 pieces of colored glass and 50 million strings of cash, and completely forgot the most important point. This Yang Shang, he was born a commoner. Where did he get 100 pieces of colored glass? Even the emperor is not so generous. Glass is a rare and unique product. And it cannot be copied. Every piece of colored glass is unique. No matter how skilled a master craftsman is, he dare not say that he has the ability to make an identical piece of colored glaze. Everyone's eyes fell on Yong Yi. Yong Yi coughed lightly. Reporting to your Majesty, I have mastered the technology of making colored glaze. Quiet. The palace suddenly became quiet. Everyone stared at Yong Yi in amazement. Making colored glaze. Is Prime Minister Yang serious? The Empress was also dumbfounded. Her phoenix eyes were full of shock. After a while, Wu Jiao slowly said, making colored glaze. Yang Qing, are you kidding? It's not that she doesn't trust her minister, it's just that the fact that he can make colored glaze is too shocking. Looking around the world, no one dares to say that he can make luli early. Yong Yi met the Empress's half-believing and half-doubting eyes and said seriously. I founded a glass workshop a few days ago. These colored glazes can be mass-produced by the workshop according to the manufacturing process. Hiss. Everyone gasped and their scalps tingled. Mass production. Gosh, this Yang Shang is too amazing. Looking around the world, no one dares to say that he can definitely make colored glaze. I didn't expect that Yang Shang can mass-produce it. Wu Jiao was shocked. This Yang Qing shocked her too much. Colored glaze is a rare treasure. It can be mass-produced. Xu Jingzong suddenly seemed to think of something, and he looked at Yong Yi in shock. Minister Yang, the reason why you packaged all these colored glazes and sold them to the nobles of Song State, and even let them raise funds to buy them, is not to wait. Before he finished the rest of his words, Yong Yi smiled slightly, and had guessed what Xu Jingzong was going to say. Mr. Xu's guess is completely correct. I do intend to buy back the colored glaze at the cost of their entire fortune. Before they plan to sell it, I will announce to the world that our great Zhou can mass-produce colored glaze. In this way, the rare colored glaze, which costs hundreds of thousands of strings of coins and only has less than a few dozen in the world, will no longer be rare, and the price will naturally collapse, perhaps from hundreds of thousands of strings of coins to a few hundred strings of coins. Even more, when the colored glaze of our great Zhou is widely popularized, it will become a must-have item for every household, and may even be reduced to a low price of dozens or even dozens of coins. By then, no one will buy the colored glaze that the Song nobles have invested their entire fortunes in. And these Song nobles will inevitably lose all their money, and it may even shake the economy of Song to a certain extent. Quote. And Zhu Dong and Gao Kan, who organized the fundraising of the Song nobles, even if they were of high status, would probably find it difficult to face the anger of the entire Song nobles. Hiss. The hall suddenly fell silent. Everyone present looked at Yong Yi, who was smiling and talking freely, with tingling scalps. This is too cruel. It was indeed the familiar living devil. They said how could Yong Yi easily let go of Zhu Jia and Gao who had offended him. So they were waiting here. Xu Jingzong, Wei Yuanzhang and others were stunned. Even though they were used to Yong Yi's vicious schemes, they were still shocked by Yong Yi's methods at this time. How bad it was. I guess those two idiots Zhu Jia and Gao thought Yong Yi was giving them meat to eat. When they ate it, they knew it was a bomb. Wu Zhao's eyelids twitched. Her phoenix eyes were full of shock. No wonder this guy was so confident and calm. It turned out that the game had been set up long ago. A full 50 million strings of cash. This is the tax revenue of the Great Zhou dynasty for a year. The hall was quiet for a long time. Xu Jingzong stroked his beard and smiled bitterly. Minister Yang is really amazing. He is so angry for his beloved. Everyone smiled bitterly. Zhu Jia and Gao Kan must regret it after being cheated. They accidentally provoked Yong Yi's woman, and ended up being schemed to lose everything. They also have to face the anger of the powerful people in Song. This is really vicious, Yong Yi said seriously. Mr. Xu is wrong. This official's plan is actually killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Everyone was stunned. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Wu Zhao raised her eyebrows and pondered. Why did Mr. Yang say that? Yong Yi said seriously. First, Song is shameless and wants to take advantage of our Great Zhou. It is clear that they don't take our Great Zhou seriously. Cheating them 50 million guan is just a small punishment. Secondly, although the treasury of our Great Zhou is not so tight at the moment, if 50 million strings of cash are deposited into the treasury, it can still do more for our Great Zhou and enhance its strength. Thirdly, didn't Your Majesty say a few days ago that our Great Zhou has no economic pillar industry? I think that since the Great Zhou has no geographically advantageous industries, we should create a specialty industry of the Great Zhou ourselves. This glass business is the industry that I think the Great Zhou can focus on developing in the future. Now, if our Great Zhou uses this as a starting point to announce the mass production of colored glaze, causing a sensation, so that everyone will focus on the Great Zhou, and the words, Great Zhou, and colored glaze, are firmly tied together, then colored glaze will be the specialty of our Great Zhou in the future. Even if the price of colored glaze will drop due to its popularity in the future, as long as our Great Zhou monopolizes the colored glaze business, it can still be used as the economic pillar industry of the Great Zhou. In this way, our Great Zhou colored glaze business will definitely be sold well in various countries. And this time, it is the best time to promote our Great Zhou colored glaze. Silence. There was silence in the hall. They didn't expect that Yong Yi came up with this vicious plan just to retaliate against Zhu Dong and Gao Kan. They didn't expect that Yong Yi, Tang Ran, had already laid out the plan. The purpose was to spread the reputation of the Great Zhou colored glaze. This living king of hell really has a plan. Everyone took a breath, with an incredible look on their faces and shock in their eyes. It's amazing. He is really a top strategist. Wu Zhao was also dumbfounded, her eyes widened. The white palm hidden in the sleeves clenched into a fist involuntarily. She didn't expect that the problem that had been bothering her for a long time was solved so easily by Yong Yi. He also taught the Song people a lesson. Wu Zhao pursed her lips. Yang Qing, have you thought about doing the glass business for a long time? Yong Yi spread his hands and said helplessly. Yes, when the emperor asked for advice last time, I wanted to say it. Quote. But you insisted on thinking it was a vicious plan and didn't let me say it out loud. You still think it now, right? Everyone subconsciously wiped their foreheads, sweating profusely. There is no problem with the glass business, but to use the Song people's bankruptcy as a gimmick to promote it. Good guy, isn't it a vicious plan now? He is worthy of being the living king of hell, with such a vicious plan. Honglu Temple. In the courtyard of the envoy of Song State. Uncle Zhu, do you think such a good thing can happen to us? We have offended Yong Yi once. Can he be so kind? Gao Kan suddenly felt a little confused. Zhu Jia carefully wiped the 3 pieces of colored glass in front of him. After hearing Gao Kan's words, Zhu Jia smiled without turning his head. You don't care whether Yong Yi has good intentions or not. Anyway, this colored glass can't be fake. As long as we get the money and get this batch of colored glass, then we will be rich, right? Can Yong Yi still play any tricks? Gao Kan nodded repeatedly after hearing this. He looked at these pieces of colored glass with some greed. Uncle Zhu is right. No matter what Yong Yi thinks, as long as this colored glass is real, it's fine. Zhu Jia's chubby face was full of greed and ecstasy. When we get the money to buy this batch of colored glaze, we will be rich. This batch of colored glaze can be exchanged for a large sum of money. Then present some colored glaze to the emperor. If the emperor is happy, maybe he can give me a job again. Gao Kan swallowed his saliva. He was also itching to do it after what Zhu said. Then let's hurry back to Bianjing and raise money first. Zhu Jia was stunned and hesitated. But the emperor's instructions. Gao Kan shook his head and said, Uncle Zhu, this marriage is a big deal. I don't know how long it will take to argue. However, if this colored glaze can be taken down and presented to the emperor will be happy. How can he care about our mission to Zhou? Besides, we have already brought the news. What does the rest have to do with us? Zhu Shu, if you don't want to leave, then I will go back. Zhu Jia glanced at Gao Kan, who had a slicked back face, and sneered in his heart. This kid actually wants to leave him alone. He calls everyone his friend, but he doesn't recognize any relatives when he sees money. This time, he can't give in. Even if it's Gao Chu. The next day, the two immediately took a boat back to Bianjing. A few days later, Bianjing, a magnificent mansion near the Imperial city. Dad, a young man with oily hair and powdered face ran in hurriedly. Gao Chu was wearing a long robe with wide sleeves. His appearance was ordinary, but his clothes were quite luxurious. He wore a futu inlaid with huge emeralds on his head, and his belt was inlaid with countless jadeite. The cuffs of his clothes were outlined with gold thread and Sioux brocade, which was obviously the work of a famous artist. He saw Gao Kan and frowned slightly. What's wrong with you? Why did you come back? Didn't you follow Zhu Jia to Zhou State? Gao Kan shook his head, swallowed his saliva, and said hurriedly. Dad, I came back for a big thing. This time, we're going to get rich. Gao Chu was stunned, and looked at his son with a strange look. Gao Kan usually bullied men and women, oppressed the people, and did a lot of inappropriate things. He also seldom cleaned up Gao Kan's ass. Anyway, as long as he can pass on the incense, it's fine. He never expected that Gao Kan would say such a thing to him now. Gao Chu smiled. Get rich. Isn't our family rich enough now? More than 100,000 acres of land, house deeds, countless shops. Gao Kan shook his head hurriedly, and his face, which had lost its color due to excessive indulgence, was full of pride. Dad, this is not comparable to these land deeds and house deeds. This time it's real money. A business that can earn tens of millions of guan. Gao Chu was stunned, frowned his thick eyebrows, and looked at his son in confusion. Are you confused? What nonsense are you talking about? A business worth tens of millions of guan. Do you know how much tax the court collects in a year? Gao Kan swallowed his saliva, widened his eyes, and almost swore in his tone. Dad, I didn't lie. Zhu Jia is trying to steal my business. Dad, look at this. He hurriedly took out a box and opened it. Here, Dad, look, this is top-grade colored glass, a rare treasure. Gao Chu took a look and was shocked. With his eyesight, of course he could see that the colored glass in front of him was a top-grade one. It was so clear and without any impurities, it was simply a top-grade treasure. Even the colored glass cups seen in the government were not as good as the one in front of him. Where did you get it? Gao Chu took the colored glass in shock. Gao Kan chuckled. He had deep eye sockets and serious dark circles, and he could hardly see his eyes when he smiled. He licked his lips. It was taken from a high-ranking official of the Zhou state. Gao Kan then told him about what happened between him and Zhu Yi in Yang's mansion. Of course, the part where he was taught a lesson by Yong Yi was omitted. After Gao Chu finished listening, a trace of doubt appeared on his well-maintained face. Why would he sell such a treasure to you? There must be something fishy about it. Gao Kan was anxious, his eyes widened, and his eyes were full of bloodshot. Dad, what fishy thing could there be? Look, is this colored glaze real? As long as the colored glaze is real, isn't it all right? Who cares what fishy thing it could be? Could it be that after we get the colored glaze, he can still snatch our colored glaze back? Gao Chu frowned. Quote. His intuition from many years of being an official told him that this matter was not simple. But Gao Kan was right. As long as the colored glaze was real, it would be all right. We can verify it when we trade it. From this point of view, there seems to be nothing to doubt. Could it be that he was too suspicious? Gao Kan was very anxious when he saw Gao Chu was so hesitant. If you hesitate any longer, you won't be able to eat meat. Such a large amount of colored glaze can be sold at a high price of 80 or 90 million guan. Pay money now. The more you pay, the more you will get. If you hesitate for too long, if Zhu Jia collects all the money, then we will not make any money. He was really anxious. Although he had a lot of assets, most of them were real estate. The real cash in his hand was less than 1 million guan. After all, as a general, he had to take care of many places every year, and the expenses were too high. But this time, if he could get this money, he could at least make a few million guan, or even more than 10 million guan. This is a sum that is rich enough to rival a country. Even those famous businessmen may not be worth so much. Gao Chu hesitated for a while, and then he said, "Okay, let's do as you say. For the sake of my father's face, we can still get a lot of money. But our family still has to take the lion's share." Gao Kan hurriedly said, "Of course we have to take the lion's share. This is a business that is sure to make money. Dad, why don't you mortgage all the assets under your name, so that we can make a lot of money when the time comes? Besides, if we get colored glaze, we can also present it to the emperor. If the emperor is happy, he may be even more favored by you." Gao Chu was still a little hesitant. Hearing Gao Kan's words, he was immediately refreshed. He was able to go from a rascal to the current status of the Grand Marshal, all because of Jian in the emperor's heart. The emperor has always liked exotic flowers and stones. And the emperor himself has a set of colored glaze cups. If he presents better colored glaze, the emperor will certainly be very happy. Gao Chu immediately said, "Okay, let's find someone to raise money now." Quote. On the other hand, Zhu Dong was also looking for friends to attract investment. Half a month later, Zhu Jia and Gao Kan have already raised money and are heading to Luoyang. The speed of raising money is smoother than they imagined. The powerful people in the Song dynasty are all knowledgeable. When they see that Luli is so top-notch, they are willing to invest money. Although 50 million guan is a lot, it is divided among more than 20 people, and each person has less than 2 million guan. Gao Chu and Gao Kan alone have contributed nearly 8 million guan. Most of the others have also poured out their assets this time in order to make a fortune. Zhu Jia and Gao Kan also brought a lot of people this time. After all, this is a large sum of money, and they have to make sure it is correct. And when trading, they have to make sure that Luli will not make any mistakes. 10 days later, Yang Mansion, Prime Minister, a group of people want to see you, because the leader calls himself Zhu Li. A servant said respectfully. Yong Yi was stunned, put down the pen in his hand, and pondered. "Take them all to the side hall." "Yes, Prime Minister." The servant left. Wei Zifu on the side blinked. She had a good memory and immediately remembered who Zhu was. She was a little confused as to why her Prime Minister was still in contact with Zhu Jia and others. But she was a smart woman and knew what to ask and what not to ask. Yong Yi pinched Wei Zifu's cheek. "Wait for me here." Wei Zifu responded respectfully. "Yes, Prime Minister." A moment later, in the hall, meet Prime Minister Yang. Zhu Jia and Gao Kan greeted Yong Yi impatiently. They came here in a hurry, anxious, and only thought about the colored glass. There was a group of people behind them, many of whom were sent by the wealthy and powerful investors. After all, it was a big deal. Of course, they had to send their own people to keep an eye on it. In addition, there were some experts in jade identification and antiques, in order to avoid receiving fake colored glass. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows, glanced at Zhu Jia and Gao Kan who were impatient, and curled up his lips slightly. This plan went more smoothly than he thought. These people were blinded by greed, and even if they felt something was wrong, they didn't care so much. Zhu Jia hurriedly said, "Prime Minister Yang, I brought the money, where is your glass?" As he spoke, he asked people to open all the boxes. In the hall, the boxes placed almost filled up the space. As soon as the boxes were opened, the boxes of gold ingots were dazzling. If 50 million strings of copper coins were to be brought here, it would probably be piled up like a mountain. If it was changed to gold, it would be less. Yong Yi nodded with satisfaction. With such a large sum of money, it is estimated that even the national treasury has never been so rich. He immediately asked people to bring all the glass. Here, it's all yours. After saying that, boxes of glass were all placed in front of everyone. Zhu Jia and Gao Kan couldn't wait to come over to check. Several experienced professionals behind them also gathered around to take a closer look. They wanted to make sure that these colored glazes were real. Yong Yi didn't care, just drank tea lightly on the side. Half an hour later, an old man wiped the sweat from his forehead with a look of shock on his face. Master Zhu, Yane, these colored glazes are all real. I have never seen so many top-quality colored glazes in my life. The people next to him also nodded. Quote. Yes, rest assured, this colored glaze can never be fake. Yes, we checked it many times, and this colored glaze is a rare treasure. So many colored glazes are actually in the hands of one person, which is really rare in the world. Top quality treasures. Hearing the words of these professionals, Zhu Jia and Gao Kan felt much more relaxed and smiled at the same time. As long as the colored glaze is real, it can be exchanged for money. They've made a fortune this time. Zhu Jia couldn't wait to say to Yong Yi, Prime Minister Yang, we'll take our leave first. Yong Yi said casually. Tis. Zhu Jia didn't care about Yong Yi's indifference, and excitedly took Gao Kan and others away to take the colored glass away. A moment later, Yong Yi asked people to collect all the gold. After a stick of incense, Yong Yi came to a remote courtyard. After a while, Prime Minister Yang, an old man with a stern face and gray hair, said respectfully with a fanatical look, Our first colored glass has been made, please take a look. Yong Yi looked in the direction of his finger. I saw a transparent glass vase quietly placed on the table. It was crystal clear, with almost no impurities. Although it was still a little worse than the top-grade glass crafts drawn by the system lottery, it was very close. Yong Yi nodded with satisfaction. Once the production of this level of glass is increased, it will surely cause a sensation across the country and even the world. By then, all of this will be money. Even if these glasses are only used for furniture, doors and windows, it will be a terrifying market. After all, if every household has to install glass, the money earned can support Dazhou for a long time. When glass becomes the iconic industry of Dazhou, it means that Dazhou's business will be prosperous. Of course, the premise of all this is that the reputation is first established. Yong Yi touched his chin and said immediately, Continue to increase production. I want to see a large number of colored glass. The next day, colored glass. Wu Mingyu widened her eyes and looked at a colored glassware in Yong Yi's hand. Her pretty face was full of shock, and her rosy lips opened slightly. You can really make it. Hello, Li Nuo. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows. Of course it can be made. This colored glass will be popularized in every household in the future and become a must-have for thousands of families. Quote, Princess, please find someone to write an article about colored glaze for me. When the Dazhou Daily is published, I want the whole country, and even the Central Plains countries, to know that Dazhou can mass-produce colored glaze, and it is of good quality and low price. Wu Mingyu blinked. I always feel that you have bad intentions when you spoke just now. Are you not using any dirty tricks again? Yong Yi raised his finger and whispered. This matter cannot be publicized. Please listen to me, Princess. Wu Mingyu looked curious and hurried over, completely forgetting the loss she had suffered before. Yong Yi glanced at her chest naturally. Tisk, this baize is really good. Wu Mingyu was looking forward to it, and heard Yong Yi whispered. Princess, you will know it after a while. Quote, Wu Mingyu. Is this fool playing tricks on her again? She looked up and met Yong Yi's innocent eyes. Wu Mingyu's fair and pretty face flushed red. She stepped back suddenly, covered her chest, and glared at Yong Yi. Lecture. A few days later, Song Dynasty. Bianjing. Gao Mansion. Hiss, this is the best. Gao Chu looked at the colored glaze in front of him in shock. He never expected that these colored glazes were more precious than he thought. Compared with these colored glazes, the colored glazes collected by the government were all garbage. Gao Kan was beaming with joy. Dad, we are going to make a fortune this time. We have to find some way to sell to other countries, especially places like Tang Dynasty and Ming Dynasty, where there are many rich people, and there will definitely be people willing to spend money. Gao Chu nodded repeatedly and praised. You always caused trouble in the past, and I had to clean up after you. This time, you finally did something big. Gao Kan's face was flushed with excitement. Dad, a good father will have a good son. I am your son, how can I harm you? Gao Chu nodded with satisfaction. He stroked his beard, greed flashed in his eyes. We can sell most of these colored glazes first, or keep some for collection. It would be even better if they can appreciate in value in the future. I will take one to present to the Emperor in 2 days. I believe the Emperor will like it very much. Gao Kan nodded repeatedly, his eyebrows flying. Of course, as long as you, Dad, do not lose the Emperor's favor. Our Gao family will always be prosperous and wealthy. Speaking of which, this Yong Yi is really a nobleman for my father and son. The father and son looked at each other and laughed, their tone full of pride. 2 days later, Gao Kan brought a group of dignitaries who invested in colored glaze to see this batch of newly arrived colored glazes. After all, it was nearly 2 million guan per person, and it was a huge loss for these dignitaries to take out so much money. Of course, they wanted to see such a huge business in person. Most of these dignitaries were royal family members of the Song dynasty, as well as new dignitaries who had risen in recent years. Hiss. Such top-grade colored glass will surely be able to sell for a good price in the future. Not bad, not bad, this time, we made a lot of money. Tisk, I didn't expect that the boy from the Gao family is quite courageous. These colored glass are rare treasures. If I hadn't sold them for money, I would really like to keep a few pieces for collection. Everyone was surprised and talked about it. Gao Kan's face showed pride. His chest was involuntarily straightened, and his whole spirit was high. Since he followed his father to Beijing, he has been hanging out in brothels and city lights all day long. Although most people respect his father, they basically look down on him. Although he doesn't care in his heart, he is now doing a big business and is praised by everyone. He is also secretly happy and feels quite high-spirited. Gao Kan waved his hand, and his slightly sallow face was full of smiles. Don't worry, everyone, I have sent people to contact the buyers. I will definitely not let you down and make a lot of money. Everyone nodded in satisfaction. Talking about other relationships is nonsense. Everyone is here to make money. One person laughed and said, Has Yane found a way? Everyone looked at Gao Kan. Gao Kan smiled confidently and said lightly, I have sent people to contact buyers from Qin, Han, Tang, Ming and other countries. I believe they can definitely take this batch of colored glaze. Everyone nodded repeatedly. Yane is really thoughtful. Quote, Yes, although there are many rich people in my Song dynasty, it is still difficult to sell all of this large batch of colored glaze at a high price. If it can be sold to other countries, the price may be doubled. We are all benefiting from Yane this time. Although everyone's status is not as good as Gao Chu, they are all powerful people in the Song dynasty. Now he praised Gao Kan a few words, which made him feel proud. But he also knew that this was because colored glaze could make money. Gao Kan was just about to show off again. A burst of hurried footsteps sounded. Yane, Yane, something bad has happened. A servant rushed in hurriedly, holding a newspaper in his hand, panting, looking at Gao Kan with horror. Gao Kan was immediately displeased. In front of so many dignitaries, how could this servant be so rude? We are all respectable people, and his servant is so rude, which shows that his master has no rules. He was a little annoyed and scolded. How can you be so flustered? If the sky falls, I will support you, why are you so flustered? Everyone seemed to be laughing. In fact, they also looked down on Gao Yane, a ruffian from the market. It's just that Gao Chu was favored by the emperor and had great power, so they were of course quite polite to Gao Yane. Now seeing Gao Kan's monkey in human form, they sneered in their hearts. Just a lucky ruffian pretending to be a celebrity. The servant swallowed his saliva, his eyes rolled around, and his forehead was covered with cold sweat. He whispered, Yane, something really happened. Gao Kan didn't think so. In the Song dynasty, his father Gao Chu was second to none. What could happen? He frowned. Hurry up and tell me, or I'll delay my business with all the masters. The servant opened his mouth. Yane, are you going to tell me now? Gao Kan frowned and said impatiently. Just tell me, what can't be said here? The servant was speechless, and then trembled and swallowed his saliva. Yane, the Dazhou Bao, just published a new issue, and Dazhou claimed that it could mass-produce colored glaze. Silence. The courtyard was so quiet that it seemed that even a pin drop could be heard. The faces of the people who were watching the show just now changed. They stared with their eyes wide open, their mouths unable to close, and their faces looked down in shock. Gao Kan's heart trembled, his triangular eyes suddenly widened, and the bloodshot in the whites of his eyes was clearly visible. A chill suddenly rushed from the soles of his feet to the top of his head, making him tremble all over. He jumped in front of the servant, grabbed his collar fiercely, and almost stuck to the servant, with a crazy look in his eyes. What did you say? Mass production of colored glaze? Don't talk nonsense. The servant was frightened by Gao Kan. He raised the newspaper in his hand with trembling hands. Yane, it's not what I said, this is written in the newspaper. Gao Kan's eyelids twitched wildly. He glanced at the newspaper in the servant's hand, and a bad premonition rose in his heart. He quickly threw the servant away, grabbed the newspaper, and was stunned after taking a look. There was a huge headline on the front page of the newspaper. Dazhou announced, Luli has completed mass production and will soon enter thousands of households. Gao Kan's breathing stagnated, and he felt a huge fear holding back his heart, making him unable to breathe. He moved his eyes down tremblingly, and suddenly saw Yong Yi's name in the newspaper. Gao Kan's pupils shrank. Yong Yi, why did this newspaper say that Yong Yi had come up with the Luli manufacturing technology? Gao Yane suddenly had a thought of disbelief in his heart. Could he have been tricked by this fool? In an instant, he felt like he was in a world of ice and snow. A chill enveloped him, and his hair stood up all over his body. The huge fear made his mind blank. Seeing that Gao Yane was silent after getting the newspaper, everyone looked at each other, and their hearts suddenly sank. Could it be true? Could Luli really be mass-produced? One person came over anxiously, snatched Gao Yane's newspaper, looked at it for a few times, and immediately saved it. It's true. His voice suddenly rose. This newspaper says that it was Yong Yi, the minister of the Ministry of Zhou, who developed the glass manufacturing technology. Yong Yi also claimed that he had sold a batch to the son of Gao Taiwei of Song. We were deceived. Boom. The heads of the people who still held a glimmer of luck suddenly went blank. Their faces were instantly pale and dull. Once the glass is mass-produced, wouldn't the glass they spent all their money to buy be worthless? Many people felt dizzy. On average, each person spent millions of strings of cash. If this glass can't be sold, or even drops to the price of ordinary decorations, they will be bleeding from the loss. It's over. It's over. This thought popped up in everyone's head. Reixiang Palace. A middle-aged man in a red robe with wide sleeves and golden dragon patterns on the cuffs rubbed the glass cup in his hand obsessively. Good, really good. Zhao Ji let go of his hand with satisfaction, and a hint of excitement appeared on his well-maintained white and tender face. He looked at Gao Chu beside him. Gao Cheng, I like your gift very much. Gao Chu's face showed joy. The emperor liked it, so he gave the right gift. Although it was a little expensive, it hurt him a little. But as long as Jian is in the emperor's heart, it is worth spending more money. This rare treasure must only be owned by the emperor. Gao Chu flattered him a little. Zhao Xin nodded with satisfaction. He said with a smile. Gao Qingjia, how much did you spend on the Li cup? I can't take your things for nothing. Gao Chu said in a deep voice. Reporting to the emperor, this set of glass cups is worth about 1 million strings of cash. It is presented to your majesty as a token of my humble intention. If your majesty cares about it, wouldn't it be too polite? Zhao Ji's eyelids jumped, and he looked at these glass cups with some surprise. Rare treasures worth millions of strings of cash. He immediately felt very fond of them. This Gao Chu is really thoughtful. Just then, a girl in a bright red jade palace skirt came in hopping. Father, don't you like colored glaze the most? I have good news for you. Zhao Ji was stunned, and smiled with his beard. Janur, what good news? The person who came was his fifth daughter, Princess Mao Zhao Fujin. Zhao Fujin blinked and raised the newspaper in her hand with a smile. Here, father, look, I heard that Dazhou can already mass-produce colored glaze. You can buy colored glaze directly from Dazhou in the future. Zhao Ji stunned. Mass production of colored glaze. Gao Chu was startled when he heard this, and his eyes widened instantly. Great Zhou mass production of colored glaze. His heart sank suddenly. Zhao Ji took the newspaper and looked at it for a few times, his face became strange. He frowned and glanced at Gao Chu with some displeasure. Gao Chu was frightened by Zhao Ji's look, but he didn't dare to snatch the newspaper to read it, and his bad premonition in his heart became deeper and deeper. After a while, Zhao Ji threw the newspaper in front of Gao Chu and said dissatisfiedly. This newspaper says Yong Yi has sold you a batch of colored glaze. Yong Yi also claimed that the colored glaze of the Great Zhou dynasty will be so cheap that every household can use it. But you told me that you spent millions of strings of cash to buy it. Am I so easy to deceive? Gao Chu was shocked, and a chill rushed straight up from his spine. His scalp was numb, and a huge fear gripped his heart, making him almost faint. Gao Chu quickly grabbed the newspaper and read it for a few seconds, and his eyes went dark. He said that there is no such good thing in the world. No wonder Yong Yi, this fool, wants to pack up the colored glass for them. It turns out that this guy has already mastered the technology of mass production of colored glass, and he deliberately cheated them out of a lot of money. Once the Dazhou Bao is published, who the hell will buy their colored glass? They originally planned to use the name of rare and unique products, which would still attract rich people to buy. But now the name of mass production of glass has come out. It is impossible for anyone to buy his colored glass. The colored glass worth 50 million strings of cash will only become a pile of waste. It's over now, it's over. Not only did he ruin his image in the eyes of the officials, but he also lost a lot of money. This large sum of money was guaranteed by his name as General Gao. If he loses this money, those powerful people who invested will tear him to pieces. Even if he was Gao Chu, he couldn't stand the hysterical anger of so many dignitaries. Gao Chu knelt down in front of Zhao Ji. Your Majesty, I am innocent. Half an hour later, Gao Chu was like a bereaved man, and explained everything in detail. He didn't want to lose the trust of the emperor because of this. The most important thing is that even with his power, he couldn't stand the revenge of those dignitaries. At present, his only way to survive is to rely on Zhao Ji. Zhao Ji took a breath and was a little shocked when he heard it. He never thought that his favorite minister would be tricked by Yong Yi. What a deep scheme. He rubbed his eyebrows and looked at Gao Chu helplessly. He admired Gao Chu very much and used him very well. Otherwise, Gao Chu would not have been promoted from a street ruffian to a general. He pondered. Yong Yi is really scheming and ruthless. I shouldn't have cheated you out of your money. But I can't help you now that you've given me all the money. Gao Chu's eyes flashed with resentment. If Zhao Ji didn't help him, he would be finished. He didn't want to go from being the glorious General Gao to being the scoundrel that everyone hated. He gritted his teeth, came up with a plan, and immediately raised his head and said to Zhao Ji. Your Majesty, this money was taken by Yong Yi in an unjust way. Your humble servant begs your Majesty to give me 10 million soldiers. Your humble servant will go to the Zhou kingdom to ask for it as a deterrent. As long as the emperor of the Zhou kingdom is afraid and he carefully considers whether he can afford to offend the Song dynasty, he will definitely let Yong Yi return the money. After all, this was the money that her ministers had cheated with despicable means, and she had to consider her reputation. As long as the 50 million strings are returned, I will only take 20 million strings, and the rest will be put into the government's private treasury. Zhao Ji's eyes lit up. If Gao Chu led the army to visit the Zhou kingdom, he could get 30 million strings into the treasury, and he would make a fortune. Even though he was the emperor of the Song dynasty, his private treasury was also very poor. After all, he often built palaces and collected strange stones. He pondered for a moment. If you give me 30 million strings, how will you pay back the money owed to those dignitaries? Gao Chu's heart was bleeding, and he gritted his teeth. I will take 20 million strings to pay back part of it first, and pay the rest later. As for the 30 million strings that were put into the government's private treasury, no third person will know. Quote. Zhao Ji nodded with satisfaction. He was the emperor, and it would be a loss of face if he robbed his ministers of money. Now Gao Chu helped him deal with the money, so it was not impossible to consider it. 30 million strings of cash. It was almost 1/3 of the tax revenue of his Song dynasty. Give it to him alone, he would be very happy. Zhao Ji hesitated for a while. What if Zhou was angered by you? I heard that they destroyed Qing. Gao Chu said quickly. Sir, they were able to destroy Qing because of Yong Yi's vicious plan, which is not worthy of being mentioned at all. Besides, their main forces are now in the Qing dynasty to eliminate the last remnants, and they have no time to fight a second war. As long as I lead the army to deter, the enemy will certainly be afraid. Besides, my Song dynasty is rich and powerful, they should also consider whether to challenge my Song dynasty for 50 million ill-gotten gains. When Zhao Ji heard it, it seemed to be the case. It's just a deterrent, and there may not be a fight. You can earn 30 million in one trip. It's a good deal. But he has always been hesitant, and he is hesitant to make a decision. Gao Chu was anxious. He was not sure that he could make Da Zhou spit out the money. But this was the only chance he could think of. Seeing that Zhao Ji still didn't say anything, he gritted his teeth. Your Majesty, I have heard that Yong Yi once slandered your Majesty. Zhao Ji was stunned. What? Gao Chu made up a story without hesitation. Yong Yi said that the emperor is still thinking about their princess of the great Zhou at his old age. It is simply shameless and wishful thinking. Zhao Ji's fair face flushed instantly, full of anger. Did this fool really say that? Although Gao Chu had no ability to govern the country, he had a strong ability to read people's expressions. He knew that Zhao Ji was always conceited, and now he must be extremely angry when he heard such words. He did not hesitate to add fuel to the fire. Yes, this matter was accidentally learned by me. I heard that Yong Yi once said that he would never agree to the marriage of my Song dynasty, and threatened to teach my Song dynasty a lesson. It is possible that my son and Zhu Dong were set up for this reason. Gao Chu naturally did not know that his nonsense was close to the truth. But it does sound reasonable. Zhao Ji was angry. He was extremely proud and conceited, otherwise he would not have hung the seal of, the only one in the world, on his waist every day. He thought that he sent someone to marry the Zhou kingdom and treated her as the queen. Zhou kingdom would not say grateful, but at least would not refuse. Unexpectedly, Yong Yi actually humiliated him behind his back. He just remembered it now. He sent Zhu Jia to the Zhou kingdom, but the Zhou kingdom did not give any feedback. It was obvious that the other party did not take his marriage invitation seriously at all. And the other party harmed Zhu Jia and Gao Kan, who had no grudges against each other, and must have been humiliating their Song dynasty. Zhao Ji slapped the table with a slap, furious. This Yong Yi is so hateful. Do you think I am made of mud? He was already a little tempted, and now Gao Chu was even more furious. He said without hesitation, Gao Chu, I will give you 100,000 soldiers and horses, go to the Great Zhou immediately to get back the 50 million strings of cash. Otherwise, let him announce to the world that the Great Zhou used such a rogue method to make money, so that everyone in the world knows how hateful the Great Zhou is. If they are stubborn, then teach them a lesson. Quote. Zhao Ji's tone was extremely confident. Although in recent years, he lost more than he won in the war against Liao. But he still believed that his Song dynasty was the most powerful country in the world. After all, his Song dynasty's economy was the first, and its weapons and equipment were the most luxurious. He just didn't believe that a small country that had just finished a war could compete with his Song dynasty. Gao Chushan's face was delighted, and he said immediately, Yes, Your Majesty. An hour later, Gao Chu returned home and saw Gao Yane, who was bruised and distraught. Gao Kan hugged Gao Chu's thighs as soon as he saw Gao Chu. Dad, we are done now. Quote. 50 million strings of cash, all paid. Gao Chu glared at Gao Kan. You are useless. I have borrowed troops from the government and will go to war tomorrow. Gao Kan's eyes widened. Dad, are you going to go to war with the Zhou kingdom? Gao Chu slapped Gao Kan on the head. What the hell? It's just borrowing the power of 100,000 troops to make Yong Yi spit out the money. This is our only chance. Otherwise, with a full 50 million strings of cash, what can you use to pay those dignitaries? Gao Kan touched his purple face and shuddered. He was beaten badly today. He showed resentment in his eyes. Dad, I want to go with you too. Gao Chu glanced at him and did not refuse. The next day, Gao Chu led the army to the Great Zhou. Zhu Jia also followed. He also hated Yong Yi. Yong Yi bankrupted him this time. A few days later, in the palace, council hall, reporting to your majesty, I have built 4 colored glaze workshops in Luoyang, and now the workshops have received many orders. Yong Yi said with a smile, as long as the Great Zhou seizes the opportunity, it will be easy to build a world-famous colored glaze country. From now on, all countries in the world will know that if they want to buy colored glaze, they have to buy it from our Great Zhou. In this way, our Great Zhou will have a specialty, and can build an economic pillar around the colored glaze industry. Everyone in the palace nodded when they heard this, and looked at Yong Yi with admiration. Look at Prime Minister Yang, this is the real talent for governing the country. Except for some losses, there are no shortcomings at all. The Empress's phoenix eyes were full of praise. Yang Qing, you did a great job. At this time, Sheng Wanwaner hurried in and whispered a few words in the Empress's ear. Wu Jiao raised her eyebrows, and her pretty face showed a little strangeness. She looked at everyone, especially Yong Yi, for a while. Song Guo Taiwei Gao Chu led an army of 100,000 and has jumped over Xingyang Pass. The other party claims that my Great Zhou wants to return 50 million guan. The hall was suddenly quiet. Everyone looked at Yong Yi with a strange look on their faces. This is a debt collector. Yong Yi's face was calm, and he was a little speechless in his heart. How did Gao Chu convince Zhao Ji to mobilize troops? Just 50 million guan. Xu Jingzong thought for a moment and said slowly. Your Majesty, Song Guo is famous for its weapons and equipment, which are of various styles and extremely high quality, and it should not be underestimated. Should we call back General Heike? Wu Jiao fell into deep thought. She said slowly, the war to wipe out the remnants of the Qing dynasty is almost coming to an end. The greatest role of Heike Chengji is to deter those hidden remnants on the territory of the Qing dynasty. If he brings his troops back, the remnants on the territory of the Qing dynasty may stir up trouble again and again. Although the Qing dynasty has been pacified, it was once a country with a vast territory after all. Although it is suppressed on the surface, who knows if there are undercurrents inside. It is a long process to completely eliminate the concept of the Qing dynasty from the mind and fully integrate the Qing dynasty into the Great Zhou. Everyone fell into deep thought. Wu Jiao raised her eyebrows. Most of our Great Zhou's troops are now deployed to Qing territory to suppress and station troops, but we can still withdraw some troops. If Song wants to fight, our Great Zhou will accompany us to the end. Everyone nodded. The country has become stronger, and they are now much tougher. Xu Jingzong stroked his beard. However, the Song people are good at using tools, and our Great Zhou is inferior in this aspect, so we still have to be cautious. Everyone nodded slightly. At this time, a voice suddenly sounded. Your Majesty, I have a plan that may be able to deal with the Song people. Quote. Everyone was stunned, and they looked in the direction of the voice. It was Yong Yi. Xu Jingzong and others were delighted and felt much more at ease. As long as Yong Yi took action, wouldn't it be easy to capture the 100,000 Song troops? Xu Jingzong's eyes showed expectation. He stroked his beard. What evil plan does Prime Minister Yang have? Wei Yuanzhang was also quite expectant. Prime Minister Yang, do you have another evil plan to annihilate the enemy's 100,000 troops? Everyone looked at Yong Yi expectantly. Even the Empress looked at Yong Yi with burning eyes. Yong Yi's mouth twitched. Good guy, he has become a synonym for bad in the eyes of everyone. He pondered for a moment. I think Gao Chu and others brought 100,000 troops here just for money. If they want to fight us, it will be unprofitable. So, I think that their move is to intimidate us, just because they want money. We might as well send someone to negotiate with them, and then drag them out. Finally, when they are in urgent need of food and grass, give them some money and let them retreat. Anyway, even if we give some of the 50 million guan, it is a sure win. The hall was suddenly quiet. Everyone looked at Yong Yi in astonishment, and they were all stunned. A complex emotion rose in their hearts. This is the strategy of Yang Shang, who they call the first poisonous scholar of the Great Zhou. It shouldn't be. How could such a simple and unskilled strategy come from Yong Yi? Xu Jingzong and Wei Yuanzhang looked at each other, with a hint of disappointment in their eyes. Drag until the enemy's food and grass can't support it, and then give money. If such a strategy hadn't come from Yong Yi, they would never have dared to believe it. Could it be that Yong Yi has run out of ideas? This thought emerged in everyone's mind. No one spoke in the hall. Everyone had a strange look on their faces. Wu Zhao frowned slightly and glanced at Yong Yi, who looked like nothing had happened. What the hell is this guy doing? Such a shallow strategy is not at Yong Yi's level at all. Besides, Yong Yi's strategy has nothing to do with human nature. And the delaying tactic that Yong Yi just mentioned actually had to be solved with money in the end. This is unreasonable. How could Yong Yi give money to others to withdraw their troops when they came to his door? This is not in line with Yong Yi's character. The hall was silent for a long time. Xu Jingzong couldn't help but say, Prime Minister Yang, this strategy is all. Yong Yi smiled slightly. Yes, that's all. If there is anything else to add, it is that the status of the person sent to negotiate cannot be too low, otherwise the other party will not be trusted. Everyone looked strange. That's it. They are not asking this. Wei Yuanzhang pondered for a moment and said with a smile. Prime Minister Yang, this strategy doesn't seem to suit your style. He was afraid that his words would offend Yong Yi. After all, Zhang Lang's talent as exhausted is not a popular word. So he spoke more tactfully. Yong Yi's angular face was full of smiles. Duke Wei, this is wrong. If we can use money to solve the war, wouldn't it be possible to minimize the losses? Besides, we are just getting something for nothing. The hall was suddenly quiet. Everyone was confused by Yong Yi's words. Is this still the living devil who slaughters people at will? Wu Zhao thought for a long time and pondered for a moment. Then do as you say. Zhang Zhangji, you will represent the Great Zhou to negotiate with the Song state. The ministers in the hall looked at each other. I didn't expect that His Majesty also agreed to such a strategy. Zhang Zhangji, the Minister of War, hurriedly said, Yes, Your Majesty. ... Half an hour later, the court meeting was over. Yong Yi was just about to leave. Shengguan Wanner came over in small steps. Prime Minister Yang, His Majesty invites you. Yong Yi was startled and raised his eyebrows. Okay. After a moment, Qianyuan Hall, Shengguan Wanner closed the door and left. Only the Empress and Yong Yi were left in the hall. Wu Zhao stared straight at Yong Yi. What are you thinking? Yong Yi looked innocent. What does Your Majesty mean? I don't understand. Wu Zhao snorted lightly, and a rare cunning appeared on her cold and noble face. Don't you think you can deceive me? Don't I know you yet? Open your heart, it's all black. The strategy you just mentioned is mediocre and has no standard. It doesn't sound like a plan you would say at all. Do you dare to say you don't have other plans? Yong Yi was stunned. It was the first time that the high and mighty Empress showed such a cunning and cute little girl. His heart was slightly moved, and he smiled. Your Majesty is really as good as a god. Quote. Wu Zhao raised her eyebrows, and the corners of her rosy lips curled up. For some reason, she suddenly felt a little happy in her heart. Look, I am the only one who understands him. She stared at Yong Yi with burning eyes. Sure enough, there are still plans. Tell me quickly, what other plans do you have? Yong Yi blinked. Your Majesty, just give me a cavalry of 30,000 people, and we will see the result in a few days. Wu Zhao frowned. This guy is still keeping it a secret. She wrinkled her delicate nose. 0. Humph, stingy. Wu Zhao finished speaking, and then she was calm. Why did her tone sound like a woman flirting with her lover? Yong Yi didn't think much about it, but smiled. Your Majesty, please be patient. Wu Zhao suppressed her complicated emotions and pretended to be indifferent. Okay, it's approved. You can go down. After a while, Yong Yi left Qianyuan Hall. Not long after he walked out of the hall, a cold voice came from behind him. Yong Yi turned around and looked at Shengguan Wanner, who appeared with a smile. Shengguan Xiu, what's the matter? Shengguan Wanner said cautiously. Prime Minister Yang, Wanner wants to know if there is any follow-up to Prime Minister Yang's plan today. Yong Yi was stunned. Why do you think so? Shengguan Wanner's cold eyes became sparkling, and the girl's admiration and worship were undoubtedly revealed at this moment. Wanner doesn't know, but Wanner feels that Prime Minister Yang is definitely not such a simple person. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows and smiled slightly. Shangguan Xiu is too kind. After saying that, he turned and left. Shangguan Wan'er watched him leave quietly until Yong Yi disappeared. She suddenly stuck out her tongue and patted her hot face with her little hands. Wan'er, you are going to die. Why do you keep saying things you shouldn't say? The next day, Song Army Camp. Report, Taiwei. A personal guard dressed in Song Army came in and said respectfully, Zhou sent someone to deliver a letter, please take a look at it. Gao Kan's eyes lit up, and he quickly took the letter, walked to Gao Chu, and presented it to Gao Chu. Gao Chu opened it, looked at it for a few times, and smiled immediately. Good. Zhu Jia, who was next to Gao Kan, looked at him curiously. Dad, what did Zhou Guo say? Gao Kan asked impatiently. Gao Chu smiled slightly. 5 days later, Zhang Zhanji, the Minister of War of the Great Zhou, came to negotiate with my Song Guo on behalf of the Great Zhou. Gao Kan laughed, and his eyebrows were full of pride. They were really shocked. Humph, Yong Yi never thought that we would bring a large army to our door. Zhu Jia also trembled and said excitedly. That's great. As long as the money is returned, it will be much easier. He has been under a lot of pressure during this period. Gao Chu stroked his beard, feeling very proud. If he hadn't come up with a countermeasure in a moment, he really couldn't explain the money. Now, the other party was intimidated by his army. As long as he was willing to negotiate, he would have a chance to get all the money back. After all, as long as the Great Zhou was not stupid, it would not confront him head-on for some money. He didn't just have these 100,000 troops behind him, but the Great Song stood behind him. Prime Minister Yang, why do you want me to negotiate with the Song army in 5 days? Zhang Zhanji was a little puzzled. Outside Xingyang Pass, we only need 2 or 3 days to reach. Yong Yi smiled. This negotiation is to delay time. The later Zhang Shengshu goes, the longer it will take, right? Zhang Zhanji was stunned. That's the truth. But, I don't know why, he always feels stupid and makes him feel a little uneasy. Chapter 91. 5 days later, Song Army Camp. I am Zhang Zhanji, and I would like to meet General Gao. Zhang Zhanji smiled. He brought only a few guards and entered the general's tent under the escort of the Song army. Gao Chu was dressed in military uniform and looked dignified. Minister Zhang is too polite. Come here, give Minister Zhang a seat. The guards beside him brought a stool for Zhang Zhanji to sit on. The Song army soldiers on Gao Chu's side sat down one after another, staring at Zhang Zhanji with a covetous look. Zhang Zhanji smiled and was not panicked at all. He came to negotiate on behalf of the Great Zhou anyway. Could it be that Gao Chu still had the guts to kill him? Gao Kan and Zhu Jia, sitting on Gao Chu's left and right, looked at Zhang Zhanji with unfriendly eyes. They were badly tricked by Yong Yi. Now they were also very unhappy with Zhang Zhanji. Gao Chu was quite indifferent. He looked at Zhang Zhanji with burning eyes. Zhang Shengshu, our Song dynasty is quite friendly to your country, and the 2 countries have never violated the border. Quote. But now, your country's Yang Shang has taken advantage of our trust in the Great Zhou and used a trick to deceive my son and friends. A full 50 million guan is really not something that ordinary people can afford. As long as your country asks Yong Yi to take out the money and return it to them, then this official will immediately lead the troops to leave the Great Zhou. Zhang Shengshu, our Song dynasty and the Great Zhou are friendly countries. We can't ruin the friendship between the 2 countries because of some people. Zhang Zhanji smiled slightly and said seriously. General Gao, my great. Gusts of cold wind blew past. Wei Qing's face was solemn. Prime Minister, we are only 3 kilometers away from the enemy now. Quote. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows. He changed into a light armor and looked handsome and unrestrained. He pondered for a moment. The whole army is divided into 2 routes. You and Shu Chu lead 1 route each, and attack the enemy on the left and right sides. Shu Chu on the side scratched his head. Prime Minister, isn't Zhang Zhanji still negotiating in the enemy camp? Why did we go around so much to sneak attack the Song army? Wei Qing was also a little puzzled. 5 days ago, the Prime Minister took the army to take a small road, made a big circle, and came to the back of the enemy. It seems that they are going to sneak attack now. However, it was the Prime Minister himself who proposed to negotiate with the Song army. What's more, Zhang Jianji, the Minister of War, is still in the enemy camp. What exactly is Yong Yi thinking? He has never figured it out. Yong Yi blinked his eyes and looked into the distance with a smile, as if he could see Zhang Jianji in the enemy camp. He said slowly, if Zhang Jianji had not negotiated in the enemy camp and let the enemy relax their vigilance, how could our army launch a surprise attack? The Song army certainly can't imagine that there is an enemy army behind them. Wei Qing was shocked when he heard this, and looked at Yong Yi in disbelief, with a look of shock on his face. What is Yang Shang planning to do? Wei Qing said cautiously. Prime Minister, if we launch a surprise attack on the enemy, then Zhang Shengshu who is in the enemy army. Yong Yi sighed. Then it depends on Zhang Shengshu's luck. If he survives by chance, he will have made great contributions. If he dies, he will be a loyal minister of my great Zhou. I will ask His Majesty to posthumously confer him the title of martyr. Wei Qing's mouth twitched, and his skin was numb. This is still the living devil. Yong Yi smiled slightly. Let's go now. Within half an hour, I want to see Gao Chu captured alive in front of me. Wei Qing and Xu Chu were shocked and said immediately. Yes, Prime Minister. In the Song army camp. ... Anyway, please rest assured, General Gao, our great Zhou is here with the attitude of resolving the problem peacefully. Zhang Jianji smiled. Although it's just a business, Prime Minister Yang also said that the friendship between the two countries is the most important, and we are very sincere. Gao Kan and Zhu Jia looked at each other and saw the excitement in each other's eyes. This is great. As long as the money is in hand, they will not be so stressed. This fool just wants to scare him. Gao Chu was also relieved. He took the risk of borrowing troops this time, and he was also taking a gamble. He was not sure whether he could make Zhou surrender. But now it seems that the result is still very smooth. He stroked his beard with a sharp look. Minister Zhang, this makes sense. Quote, if Yong Yi hadn't gone too far this time, why would Kungwan offend the kingdom of Qian? Our great Song has always upheld the idea of peace with your country. If this matter affects the diplomatic relations between the two countries, wouldn't it be a laughing stock? Zhang Jianji nodded, with a serious face. The commander is right. Our great Zhou is willing to cooperate with the Song kingdom, but the commander must also withdraw these troops from our great Zhou. Quote. Gao Chu smiled faintly. Okay, as long as your country. He hadn't finished speaking. Suddenly, outside the tent, a burst of overwhelming shouting and killing suddenly sounded. Everyone in the general's tent was stunned. There is an enemy attack. A Song army general stood up suddenly, took a breath, and said in shock. Gao Kan and Zhu Jia stood up suddenly with horror on their faces. Enemy attack. They were numb. Didn't they say they came to negotiate? Why did the enemy suddenly attack? Gao Chu's face changed drastically. He looked at Zhang Jianji on the side angrily. Zhang Jianji, is this what you call sincerity? Solve the problem peacefully. Zhang Jianji was also confused. What the hell? Enemy attack. The guards behind him were all at a loss. Zhang Jianji stood up quickly. General Gao, this must be a misunderstanding. Quote, my great Zhou wants to negotiate with the Song state, why would they send people to attack? Besides, I'm still here, how could my great Zhou send people to attack? Gao Chu frowned. That's right. The Minister of War Zhang Jianji is still here, why would the other party attack? Zhang Jianji was about to continue speaking. Suddenly, a burst of shouting came from outside. Long live the great Zhou. Capture Gao Chu alive. In the general's tent, there was a dead silence. Zhang Jianji was numb. How could it really be the great Zhou that attacked? No, I'm still here. Gao Chu's face changed drastically. He quickly opened the tent, and the sound outside came in more clearly. The overwhelming shouting and killing sounded like the death horn of the god of death. Gao Kan was terrified. He looked at Zhang Jianji angrily. You still dare to say that it's not your Zhou that attacked? You are so despicable. You deliberately deceived us with peace talks and attacked us from behind, right? I'll chop you off first today. Zhang Jianji was numb. Yong Yi had clearly said peace talks before. How come it suddenly became an enemy attack? Could this living devil be using him to negotiate and deliberately lure the enemy? As soon as this thought flashed through Zhang Zhangji's mind, his scalp suddenly went numb. A chill rushed straight from his coccyx to the top of his head. He was wondering how this living devil suddenly became a living bodhisattva, and he was planning to solve the problem with money. This is clearly a trick within a trick. It's so vicious. My life, you don't care at all. Zhang Zhangji's face was shaking wildly. He was more scared than Gao Chu and the others now. He was in the enemy's lair now. His calves were trembling. If he died here, it would be too unfair for him. Gao Chu on the side said decisively. Retreat, quickly cover me to retreat. It was unknown how many enemy troops were outside, but the sound seemed to be close at hand. The enemy was obviously coming for him. If he didn't leave now, he would be finished. Gao Kan was furious. I'll kill this fool first. Zhang Zhangji quickly retreated. The guards next to him blocked him. Gao Chu frowned and said angrily. It will be too late if you don't leave now. Go. He rushed out of the general's tent immediately after he finished speaking. Gao Kan and Zhu Jia swallowed their saliva, glanced at Zhang Zhangji who was trembling and surrounded by guards, and hurriedly followed him in a panic. It would be too unworthy if this fool was hacked to death by the Zhou army here. Kill. As soon as Gao Chu and his men rushed out, they heard a burst of overwhelming shouts of killing. Gao Chu looked up and saw a group of cavalrymen in black armor, like sharp blades, rushing straight towards them from behind, with the momentum of thunder and the speed of lightning. Gao Kan, Zhu Jia and others were so scared that their souls almost flew out. Before they became famous, they were just a group of ordinary street hooligans. Where had they experienced war? It was okay to bully ordinary people, but when they really met a vicious enemy, their legs became weak and they almost peed. Gao Chu was not much better. His face was pale. Run. He ran desperately outside under the protection of everyone. However, they were in high positions and enjoyed wealth and glory on weekdays. How many horses had they ridden? In a panic, they could not ride fast at all. The soldiers of the Great Zhou behind them appeared behind them in an instant. Gao Chu was terrified. A chill rushed to the top of his head. It's over. Half a day later. Luoyang, the council hall. Report, Your Majesty, our army has defeated the Song army and captured the enemy commander Gao Chu alive. A soldier rushed in with a look of ecstasy. The hall was suddenly quiet. Xu Jingzong, Wei Yuanzhang and others were shocked. Captured the enemy commander alive. Wu Jiao was also stunned, with shock flashing in her eyes. This guy actually captured the enemy commander alive without making a sound. Xu Jingzong swallowed his saliva and said quickly. How did we defeat the enemy? Aren't we negotiating? The other officials were also stunned. The soldier immediately said, Zhang Shengshu has arrived at the enemy camp today and negotiated with the enemy commander. And our army, under the command of the Prime Minister, took a small road to make a big circle, set out 5 days ago, went around the enemy's rear, attacked them unexpectedly, and attacked the enemy on both sides in 2 ways, catching the enemy off guard. The 100,000-strong army was shattered by the impact of our 30,000-strong army, and there was no time to defend. The enemy's main general fled in panic and was captured alive by our soldiers. His words fell. The hall suddenly fell into silence. Everyone looked, stunned. Where is the peace talk? It was just a cover. They said how could the living devil be so kind? It turned out that he was holding back a trick. Wei Yuanzhang suddenly found something wrong. He pondered. Wait, you raided, what about Zhang Zhangji? Everyone was stunned, and then they remembered. It seems that Zhang Zhangji went to the enemy camp to negotiate with people. The soldier was stunned, and spared Raoshi. This, I don't know. Yang Shang didn't explain it. The hall suddenly fell into silence. Hiss. Everyone gasped and was stunned. No one present was stupid. They all reacted now. The living devil is the living devil. This is to use Zhang Zhangji's life to fool Gao Chu. Let Gao Chu and others relax their vigilance. And he could secretly lead the enemy troops to go around and attack the enemy by surprise. He easily eliminated the enemy and captured the main general alive. This is a good strategy, but it is a bit cruel to Zhang Zhangji. Xu Jingzong looked strange. He said why Yong Yi came up with such an inexplicable peace negotiation strategy. It turned out to be a plan within a plan. He is really cruel. He didn't care about Zhang Zhangji's life or death. If the enemy killed Zhang Zhangji in anger, Zhang Zhangji would not be able to cry. Wei Yuanzhang swallowed his saliva and his scalp was numb. The living devil is still the living devil. Who would have thought that his colleague would say no and no? The enemy probably couldn't think that the dignified Minister of War was just a discarded child in Yong Yi's eyes. He smiled bitterly. Prime Minister Yang, still the same Prime Minister Yang. Everyone nodded in shock. They thought that the living devil had become a living bodhisattva. Now think about it, it's really wrong. None of the living devil's strategies are humane, they are all extremely vicious. However, a strange thought flashed through their minds. Although this poisonous plan cost Zhang Zhangji a little, now the enemy's main general was captured alive and the enemy was easily defeated. It's still worth it. Wu Jiao rubbed her eyebrows, her eyes were full of shock, her lips slightly opened, almost unable to close. Her heart was like a sea of overturned, and she was shocked beyond words. She never expected that Yong Yi would actually defeat the enemy in such a way. No wonder he refused to tell her the strategy at the beginning. It turned out that this was to use Zhang Zhangji as bait. Her fair and cold face was full of complexity. This guy is really a black heart. In order to capture the enemy's main general alive, his colleagues said to sell him. He is worthy of being the first poisoner in the Great Zhou. 3 days later, Luoyang, outside the council hall. Your Majesty, I want to see Your Majesty. Zhang Zhangji was dusty, his face was black, his body was messy, and he was covered in dust. The ministers next to him looked at Zhang Zhangji in confusion. This Minister Zhang is not dead. Xu Jingzong stroked his beard, a little surprised. Minister Zhang, you are not dead yet. Zhang Zhangji's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He gritted his teeth and said, I almost ended up like Li Shiqi of the Han dynasty. Everyone was stunned and looked at each other. The Li Shiqi mentioned by Zhang Zhangji was a famous lobbyist of the Han dynasty. When Liu Bang, the founding emperor of the Han dynasty, attacked Qi, Li Shiqi went to negotiate with the king of Qi as a lobbyist. As a result, Han Xin did not follow the ethics of martial arts and attacked Qi during the negotiation. In the end, Li Shiqi was cooked by the king of Qi. Xu Jingzong coughed lightly. Zhang Shangshu, although Yong Yi's plan was a bit unkind, it was still effective. He captured the opponent's commander alive, defeated the enemy with fewer troops, and fought a great and beautiful battle. The others nodded. Zhang Zhangji gritted his teeth in anger. The knife didn't cut me, so it didn't hurt at all. He was indignant. The key is that Yong Yi didn't even say hello to me, and I was almost killed by the enemy. Quote, he is really wicked. Everyone couldn't help laughing. Yong Yi's move was indeed a bit mean, but Zhang Zhangji couldn't be blamed for being angry. Who wouldn't be angry? They were talking well, but they almost died without a word. Zhang Zhangji said angrily, no, I must go to His Majesty and give him a good beating. Half a day later, Qianyuan Hall. You are finally back. Wu Zhao's cold and beautiful voice sounded, revealing a hint of helplessness. Zhang Zhangji came back alive and scolded you in front of me for a whole morning. Yong Yi said with a smile. Shangshu Zhang has also made great sacrifices for the country, so it is normal for him to feel resentful. But let me do it again, I will still choose this way. Hardship for Zhang Zhangji, I will bear the infamy. Wu Zhao, what a loyal and patriotic Prime Minister Yang Xian. She pondered. Gao Chu, how are you going to deal with him? Yong Yi's eyes showed a hint of smile. This man actually dared to bring a large army to provoke our great Zhou. Of course, he should be beheaded at the entrance of the vegetable market to serve as a warning to others. Wu Zhao pondered. What are the casualties this time? Yong Yi said seriously. We killed more than 10,000 enemies, captured 60,000 enemies, and the remaining enemies fled. Our army only had a few hundred casualties. The Empress nodded slightly. She looked calm. No wonder you have to do this despite the infamy. If it were me, I'm afraid I would only have to suffer for Zhang Zhangji. Quote. The king and his minister smiled at each other. Song Dynasty. Reixiang Palace. Li Yan, the chief eunuch of the palace, rolled and crawled to Zhao Ji, panting. Zhao Ji frowned and stopped writing. On the table in front of him, there was a piece of fine rice paper with a picture of a mountain bird painted on it. When he was painting, he didn't like anyone to disturb him. Li Yan swallowed his saliva. Of course he knew that Zhao Ji was unhappy at this time, but he could only bite the bullet and said, "Your Majesty, General Gao was defeated and captured. I heard that he would be captured by Yong Yi Zhan Yu downtown." Snap. Zhao Ji's pen loosened and fell on the paper, instantly soaking a large ink spot on the half-finished flower and bird painting. He looked up suddenly, looking at the sweaty Li Yan in shock. "What did you say? He was captured. What about my army?" The silence in the hall was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Li Yan's trembling voice sounded. 10,000 of our soldiers were killed by the Zhou army, and 60,000 were captured. Some of the rest escaped and some disappeared. Zhao Ji's eyes shrank. He looked at Li Yan in disbelief. "You mean, my 100,000 troops, only some stragglers are left?" Li Yan lowered his head and whispered, "Yes, Your Majesty." Zhao Xin's eyes went dark, and he stumbled and almost fell. Li Yan next to him was horrified. Quote. Daming. Function hall. A burst of footsteps sounded. "Father." Zhu Biao walked in with a strange look on his face. "Father, have you heard that Zhou and Song have fought?" Zhu Yuanzhong, who was holding the memorial, was stunned. He looked up at Zhu Biao. "Why did Zhou and Song fight?" Zhu Biao smiled bitterly and then told the story of Yong Yi using colored glaze to trick the people of Song. After a while, quote. This person is not only proficient in military tactics, but also knows how to make colored glaze. He is really a genius. Zhu Biao sighed and concluded. Zhu Yuanzhong's eyelids twitched, and his tiger eyes were full of complexity. This guy is really a vindictive person. If you can avoid provoking this person, don't provoke him. If you provoke him, you must go all out to kill him, otherwise, this guy's strategy is too insidious. He actually cheated out 50 million guan. This Gao Chu is also a brainless fool. Quote. Zhu Biao nodded in agreement. Indeed, it is 50 million guan, which is equivalent to most of the tax revenue of the Ming dynasty in a year. It would be great if there were such a ruthless person in the Ming dynasty. Zhu Yuanzhong frowned. He was also a little envious. The Ming dynasty is still short of money now. Zhu Yuanzhong pondered for a moment. "Second brother, you're getting married next month, right?" Zhu Biao was stunned, not understanding why Zhu Yuanzhong suddenly said this. He said quickly, "Reporting to the emperor, it's the 5th day of next month." Zhu Yuanzhong nodded slightly, and then his eyes fell on the memorial again. "Send an invitation letter to Zhou Guo, and then send a private invitation to Yong Yi separately." Zhu Biao was stunned, and looked at his father in surprise. He didn't expect that Yong Yi had been valued to such an extent in Zhu Yuanzhong's eyes. Tang Dynasty. Interesting, interesting. Li Shimin stroked the glass cup in his hand, thinking, ordinary people can make glass mostly to make money, but Yong Yi actually cheated people first, what a harm to the king. His Highness Chengsun Wuji and others were both amused and confused. Now they heard that Yong Yi cheated people, and they were no longer upset. They wondered when this kid would become a good person. Li Shimin frowned. But this boy's military talent was fully exposed in this battle. A talent who can govern the country and the people and fight wars appeared in Zhou State. There are talented people in every generation. He is still young, and we are old. I wonder what kind of threat he will bring to the Tang dynasty in the future. Everyone fell into deep thought. Chengsun Wuji hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, I think there is no need to be so afraid." Quote. Everyone was stunned and looked at Chengsun Wuji. Li Shimin rubbed his brows. "Fuji, what do you mean?" Chengsun Wuji pondered and said, "Although Yong Yi is a man of great talent, he provokes enemies everywhere and his methods are cruel. If this continues, he will surely be the enemy of the whole world. What is there to fear? Even if he has a natural talent, can he still deal with all the enemies in the world?" Everyone nodded slightly. Chengsun Wuji's words make sense. Li Shimin nodded silently. Fuji's words make sense. Maybe I am worrying too much. Quote. Dakin. Your Majesty, this is the glass of Dazhou. Now Dakin has purchased a large number of glass from Zhou. These glass are not expensive and will soon be popular in Dakin. Li Si said respectfully. Ying Zheng held the glass beads in his hand with a complicated expression. Is this the all-rounder in the world? Can you make such a rare thing as glass? Li Si was silent for a moment. He was a conceited person, but in front of Yong Yi, not even a hint of pride could be raised. This person is truly a rare genius. Da da da. A hurried sound of footsteps sounded. A maid ran over in a hurry. Ying Zheng glanced at the maid and raised his eyebrows. What's going on? This maid was the personal maid of his youngest daughter. Did Ying Yin Man have an accident? The maid hurriedly said, Your Majesty, the princess left a letter and disappeared. The palace was silent. Li Si lowered his head, feeling a little complicated. This Princess Yin Man is the most beloved princess of His Majesty the Emperor. A while ago, he asked the Emperor to grant marriage to his son and Princess Yin Man. Unexpectedly, Ying Yin Man disappeared now. Could it be that she ran away because she didn't want to be granted marriage? Ying Zheng was silent for a while, took the letter, opened it and looked at it for a few times. His face looked a little bad. His daughter actually jumped out directly because she was not satisfied with his marriage to Li Si's son. Ying Zheng rubbed his eyebrows. Li Si, send someone to check immediately. I want to know where she is now. Yes, Your Majesty, Li Si said hurriedly. 10 days later. Great Zhou, Luoyang, Prime Minister Yang. This is a handwritten letter from the Prince of the Great Ming. The prince once said that Prime Minister Yang must accept it personally. A guard dressed in Ming Dynasty costumes said respectfully. Yong Yi was stunned, and then opened it, looked at it for a few times. His face was a little surprised. The Prince of Ming is getting married. As an ally, Da Zhou is of course invited. However, why did the prince invite him alone? Yong Yi thought for a moment, not knowing why, and then said, Go back and tell your prince that I will be there. The guard responded quickly. Yes, Prime Minister Yang. After the guard left, Yong Yi immediately took a carriage to the palace. After a stick of incense. In the Qianyuan Hall. Did you invite? Wu Zhao thought, since you were invited, you should represent Da Zhou to congratulate. Ming has become stronger in recent years. As the saying goes, knowing yourself and knowing the enemy, 100 battles will win. Yong Yi said seriously. Yes, Your Majesty, but I just don't know if the Ming Dynasty will have any conspiracy or intrigues. Wu Zhao rolled her eyes. Except for you, who else can use such a sinister method? She pursed her lips. How could his son's marriage set up a trap to plot against you? Besides, you are going there on behalf of my great Zhou, and there is no grudge or hatred between us. Why would he provoke my great Zhou? In my opinion, at best, he appreciates your talent and offers you all kinds of tempting conditions, hoping to pull you to the Ming Dynasty to be an official. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows and smiled. Then Your Majesty, if the Ming Dynasty really does this, what should I do? Wu Zhao smiled. What do you think, Yang Qing? Yong Yi raised his eyebrows and smiled. Then Your Majesty, if the Ming Dynasty really does this, what should I do? Wu Zhao smiled. What do you think, Yang Qing? Yong Yi said righteously, I have to at least last until the beauty trap. Wu Zhao, she couldn't help but chuckle, and a smile appeared on her cold and noble face. She looked like a snow lotus on the Tianshan mountain, and her full chest rose and fell, outlining a perfect arc. Yong Yi smacked her lips. This must be twice the size of Wu Mingyu. Good guy, at least E-cup. I didn't expect that the high and mighty, cold and noble, serious, wearing a large and heavy dragon robe, the Empress, usually doesn't show her mountain and water, but in fact, she is very attractive. In the future, she is a complete goddess president of the abstinence system. The Empress glanced at Yong Yi unhappily. I gave you Sanyang, and you didn't. Could it be that I, the princess of the royal family, can't compare to those so-called beauty traps? Yong Yi stared at the trembling chest of the Empress for a few seconds and blurted out. If Your Majesty uses the beauty trap for me, it will definitely work. The palace was quiet. Wu Zhao clenched her hands hidden in her sleeves. She kept her facial expression unchanged and tried to calm herself down. But her red ears revealed her inner embarrassment. This fool, was he really too polite to him? So he became more and more presumptuous. Wu Zhao's heart was trembling. Yong Yi had regretted it. It was a taboo to tease a female leader. But seeing that the Empress did not seem angry, he was slightly moved. It seemed that the enemy did not seem to be disgusted. Yong Yi thought about it, and said calmly, Your Majesty, I actually think that teenage girls are too immature. Women in their early 20s are more feminine, mature and charming. They are the most attractive B1 of women. Okay, Wu Jiao suddenly had no expression on his face. I am tired, you can leave. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows and said with a smile. Yes, Your Majesty. After Yong Yi left, Wu Jiao suddenly seemed to be relieved and breathed slowly. Her face turned red visibly. The Empress touched her face and said angrily. This traitor is getting more and more presumptuous. However, she soon calmed down. Wu Jiao walked to a bronze mirror and took a close look at her appearance. Bright and charming, cold and noble. She thought of Yong Yi's words just now. Are women in their early 20s the most attractive? An inexplicable emotion emerged in her heart. Yong Yi had just left the palace. A servant hurried over and whispered. Prime Minister Yang, there is a woman in the newspaper office, you. She calls herself Man, and says she knows you. Yong Yi was stunned. Man. He fell into deep thought. It sounds a bit familiar. Then, he suddenly reacted. Isn't this Man the lady from Qin who had been corresponding with him before? At that time, Da Zhou Bao had just been published. There were many people who came to the newspaper office to write letters, but this Man left a deep impression on him. Because of her extraordinary conversation and beautiful handwriting, it seems that she came from an official family. It seems that she also knows Qin Emperor Ying Zheng quite well, so he has been communicating with Man. As a result, Wu Mingyu was jealous for a while because of this, and told him to be careful not to meet a fat man weighing 200 kilograms. The last time this Man wrote a letter, she claimed that she was forced to marry by her father. Yong Yi replied casually, if forced to marry, run away. As a result, the last letter that Man wrote to him was to come to him. Yong Yi didn't take it seriously. In the future, there are many online lovers who meet in person. But in the present, he doesn't believe that a woman will really come to meet in person. As a result, she is really here now. Yong Yi's eyelids twitched. He coughed lightly. What does this woman look like? The servant said quickly. A beauty of the country. Yong Yi said without hesitation. Let's go, Yanxi. It seems that she is still a beautiful girl. This girl also claimed that she could meet Ying Zheng, and she must be the daughter of a minister of the Qin state. So, in order to get more information about the Qin state, he decided to meet this girl in person. The headquarters of the Dazhou newspaper. The atmosphere was a bit depressing. Everyone was tiptoeing and cautious. Many people lowered their heads and did their own things. Wu Mingyu put her hands on her waist, her beautiful eyes widened, and she looked at the bright girl in front of her with an unhappy face. I told you, there is no one called the king here. Oh, She felt indignant. This woman suddenly appeared here this morning, claiming that she had a close relationship with Runtu, who wrote, Dream of Red Mansions, and was an excellent friend. Others don't know, how could she not know? That Runtu is Yong Yi. This lecture actually provoked such a beautiful woman. How abominable. The girl was dressed gorgeously, wearing a light blue silk hairpin flower long skirt, and her long black and smooth hair was tied into a cross bun commonly used by Qin women. The hair on both sides was curled, which set off her petite and cute face, but her figure was good, with a pair of long and slender legs. Ying Yinmin looked at the furious Wu Mingyu with a smile, and blinked. But Brother Runtu said he was here. Wu Mingyu's chest trembled with anger. Pa, shameless woman, how could she call him so intimately? She was about to scold Ying Yinmin. Suddenly, Sha Guang saw Yong Yi walking in. Wu Mingyu raised her eyebrows, looking unhappy. Why are you here? Yong Yi smiled. I heard from the servants that someone is looking for me. Wu Mingyu shook her head. No. Are you Brother Runtu? Ying Yinmin's eyes suddenly lit up, and she looked at Yong Yi in surprise. She didn't expect that this talented and humorous man would be so handsome. Yong Yi was stunned, and his eyes fell on Ying Yinmin, thinking. Man. Ying Yinmin's rosy lips curled up and smiled sweetly. It's me. Wu Mingyu's chest rose and fell violently, and her eyes were full of anger. Man. She called him so intimately. This lecture is a natural beauty. Yong Yi didn't expect that Man would be so beautiful. Especially a pair of long legs. These legs are really good. He pondered and said, it must have taken a lot of effort to come here from Qin. I will prepare a place for you to stay. You can settle down and rest for a while. In addition, my last name is Yang. Ying Yinmin nodded obediently. Okay. She did not look at Wu Mingyu for a few more times. Although this woman is good-looking, She did not take her seriously. Then, Wu Mingyu got on the carriage first at Yong Yi's signal. Wu Mingyu came over angrily, looking unhappy. Hey, this woman's origin is unknown. Be careful not to capsize in the ditch. Yong Yi looked at Wu Mingyu strangely. Isn't your highness not jealous? Wu Mingyu snorted coldly. Oh, of course I won't be jealous. But this woman is a vixen at first glance, you should be careful not to be fooled. Then I will deceive you around. Yong Yi nodded in agreement. Don't worry, your highness. I won't be cheated. I always hold a principle towards women. Wu Mingyu was a little curious. What principle? Don't disappoint good girls, don't waste bad girls. Yong Yi said, and left gracefully. Wu Mingyu's beautiful eyes widened, and she gritted her teeth as she looked at Yong Yi who was leaving. She was worried that Yong Yi, the scoundrel, would be cheated. As a result, this guy actually said such a scumbag. He is simply a playboy. Pooh, Wu Mingyu spat fiercely in her heart. It should be said that Yong Yi's entanglement with a woman has nothing to do with her. But for some reason, she felt sour in her heart, which made her very unhappy. Yong Yi quickly settled Ying Yin Man down. An hour later. Night fell. In the mansion, Ying Yin Man blinked her beautiful eyes. She looked at the glass windows around her in some surprise. Ying Yin Man dared to swear that she had never seen so many glass in her life. Although she knew that Dazhou was able to mass-produce glass, when she saw such a large area of glass windows with her own eyes, she was shocked beyond words. She pursed her lips. Brother Yang, how much did you spend on so many glass? Yong Yi glanced at the shocked Ying Yin Man and smiled. Prime Minister Yang has developed glass manufacturing technology. Glass is no longer valuable in my Dazhou. Now a piece of glass about 10 feet in size only costs 20 taels of silver. If there are more glass workshops in the future, the price will become cheaper and cheaper. Quote. Ying Yin Man's rosy lips opened wide, with a look of shock. A piece of glass about 10 feet long, only 20 taels. She took a breath, her heart was filled with shock. You know, because of the Great Zhou, glass is no longer as expensive as it was back then. But glass from other places is still expensive. After all, transportation is inconvenient these days, and the depreciation of glass is not that fast. But when she came to the Great Zhou, the alienated price here really shocked her. Yong Yi ignored Ying Yin Man's surprised face, and asked the servants to serve the dishes. He said with a smile, you must be tired after traveling all the way. I'll take you to eat something delicious. Ying Yin Man nodded absent-mindedly. She is a princess, what has she not seen? As for the food, she is not so looking forward to it. After a while, a hot pot with fire was placed in front of the two. The aroma coming from the floor refreshed her spirits. She sniffed and looked at the pot in surprise. What is this? It smells so good. Ying Yin Man licked her lips. Yong Yi picked up some meat slices with chopsticks and put them in. This is called hot pot. When the meat is cooked, you can eat it. Ying Yin smelled the aroma and was a little greedy. When will it be ready? Yong Yi laughed. Wait a minute. Ying Yin Man nodded obediently and looked forward to it. You didn't really escape this time. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows and asked casually. Ying Yin Man blinked, swallowed his saliva, and smiled. Yes, my father insisted that I marry a guy with a gloomy face, and I ran away because I didn't want to. Yong Yi glanced at her. You ran here, aren't you afraid that I will do something wrong? Ying Yin Man blinked and suddenly straightened her chest. Will you? Yong Yi looked righteous. Don't worry, I'm not a good person. Ying Yin Man, she snorted. Brother Yang, don't lie to me. You look like a good person. Besides, your mansion is so big, you must be of extraordinary status. How could you do such a despicable thing? Yong Yi's mouth twitched. He was used to being a bad guy, but this was the first time someone praised him as a good person. He rolled his eyes. Really, my colleagues say I'm a living devil when they see me. As he spoke, he picked up the meat slices that had just been put down and gave them to Ying Yin Man. Ying Yin Man quickly ate a piece of meat, her almond eyes widened. It was so delicious. The hot pot she had eaten in Qin State was not as delicious as this. She almost swallowed her tongue. She ate several slices in a row, and her lips turned red from the spicy meat slices. Huff, huff, huff. Ying Yin Man, fanning her hands, she said with a smile, what living devil? I think Brother Yong is a very good person, but I heard that you have a prime minister named Yong, who is cruel, treacherous and cunning. Yong Yi. He twitched his lips. Ying Yin Man devoured the meat slices in the hot pot. After a while, Yong Yi looked at Ying Yin Man, who had regained her elegance and dignity, and felt a little funny. Let's go, I'll take you to eat some fruit. Ying Yin Man licked her lips, a little surprised. Brother Yong, it's just winter now, where can we get the fruit? This Brother Yong is not fooling her. Yong Yi said with a smile. Just follow me. After that, he took Ying Yin Man to the vegetable greenhouse. The vegetable greenhouse here was built by him before, and many off-season fruits grew in it. After a while, Yong Yi opened the greenhouse and walked in. Ying Yin Man walked in with doubt in her heart. As soon as she entered, her eyes widened instantly. Such a big, thick, eggplant. Quote, there are oranges. Ying Yin Man was stunned. She never thought that she would see these out-of-season fruits in such a cold season. Yong Yi smiled and picked up a cucumber, scooped out the water next to it and washed the cucumber. Here, try this. Ying Yin Man took the cucumber and was dumbfounded. Wow, it's so big and hard, what is this? Why have I never seen it? Yong Yi smiled. This is called cucumber, it tastes very good, crisp and sweet. After eating spicy food, another cucumber, it's full of flavor. Ying Yin Man looked at the cucumber with some curiosity, and then took a bite. Crack. The cucumber was bitten off. Yong Yi's mouth twitched. This girl is so cruel. I have to teach her to be gentle next time, just in case it will be useful in the future. Next, Yong Yi took some other fruits that Ying Yinman had never seen before. These fruits were drawn from the system lottery before. Ying Yinman had never seen so many strange fruits out of season, and she couldn't eat them all. The next day, Yong Yi took Ying Yinman out of the city for a walk. On the street, Ying Yinman looked at the colored glass in many shops with some surprise, and was still a little surprised. Compared with Dakan, Dazhou seemed to be more prosperous. She couldn't help but say, I heard that Zhou was small in area and weak in national strength. Why does it feel so prosperous when I see it today? Although my Dakan is also a strong country, how can Shenyang be as good as Luoyang? Hey, wait, what is that? Quote. Quote. Ying Yinman's eyes suddenly fell on a stall not far away. I saw that there were gray things roasted on the stall. And there was a faint and tempting aroma coming from it. Yong Yi glanced at it and smiled slightly. This is called sweet potato. It is a specialty of our great Zhou. It is cold resistant and drought resistant, and produces 1,000 kilograms per mu. Ying Yinman was dumbfounded when she heard this. 1,000 kilograms per mu. Impossible. Father, my father said that the best grain production in the Central Plains was in the Tang and Song dynasties. But even the well-cared for fertile fields in these two countries can only produce 300 kilograms at most. Quote, Brother Yong, you are not teasing me, are you? Yong Yi said with a smile. Just ask and you will know. He took Ying Yin Man to the man who was setting up the stall. How much is this sweet potato? The man said quickly, which one do you like? I will weigh it for you. Yong Yi glanced at Ying Yin Man, who immediately pointed to a medium-sized sweet potato. The man quickly took the sweet potato, wrapped it up, and weighed it. Alex. Yong Yi took out the money and handed the sweet potato to Ying Yin Man. Here, try it. Ying Yin Man took it, blew a few breaths, tasted it, and his eyes were set. It tastes really good. Yong Yi looked at the man. Brother, how is the harvest of the sweet potatoes planted last year? The man had a rough face and dark skin, and smiled innocently. I didn't take good care of it, and I harvested 800 jins of one temple. The neighbor Wang Niang harvested more than 1,000 jins per mu of land. This year is really a bumper harvest. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows. It seems that the tax reduction policy for planting sweet potatoes last year is still useful. This year is destined to be a bumper year. Ying Yin Man on the side was stunned, and she didn't even care about eating, and looked at the man in shock. 1,000 jin per mu. How is this possible? The man hurriedly said, Miss, I didn't lie to you. Thanks to the blessing of Yangshang, if Yangshang hadn't asked us to plant it, we wouldn't believe it at the beginning, but in the end, everyone who planted this sweet potato harvested at least 700 to 800 jins per mu of land, and there were even more harvests. How could there be more than 1,000 jins? Ying Yin Man's rosy lips couldn't close, and she was stunned. Really more than 1,000 jins. She looked at the sweet potato in her hand with a tingling scalp. This thing is quite delicious. Does the great Zhou actually have crops that can be called divine? I heard from my father that the harvest in Dakan seems to be a little bad. Dazhou is completely different. She can see the happy look on this man's face. Ying Yinmin was a little confused. In her mind, Dakan has always been one of the most powerful empires in the world. As the shining pearl of the empire, Ying Yinmin never thought that there would be a place in the world more prosperous than Dakan. But now, she is wrong. The sweet potato yield of 1,000 kilograms per mu alone has shocked her speechless. Not to mention the hot pot she ate last night, and the off-season fruits. Especially the cucumber, crisp and sweet. Dakan doesn't have it. She is the princess of Dakan. Why is she like a bumpkin in Dazhou? She hasn't seen this, and she hasn't seen that. Has Dazhou been so prosperous? Ying Yinmin couldn't help but say. You just said that it was thanks to Prime Minister Yang. What does this have to do with Yong Yi? The man's face showed pride. Prince Yang is a wise Prime Minister of our great Zhou. These sweet potatoes and corn were brought out by Prime Minister Yang. Ying Yinmin was startled and said subconsciously. Isn't Prime Minister Yang vicious and treacherous? The man's face was a little unhappy. Miss, you are wrong. If it weren't for Prime Minister Yang, how could we live such a good life? Prince Yang did a lot for us. He then told Yong Yi about the disaster relief and teaching grain merchants in the Great Zhou, and he told them with great emotion. Yong Yi felt his eyes twitching when he listened to it. The man made him sound so amazing that even he himself was embarrassed. Ying Yinmin was dumbfounded, especially when she heard that Yong Yi solved the food crisis by raising food prices. She was shocked. This man is so talented. How smart must he be to come up with such an idea? Finally, the man smacked his lips. Although Prime Minister Yang is called the poisonous Prime Minister, he is not cruel to us people at all. On the contrary, it is those powerful and wealthy people, Baihei. Quote. Ying Yinmin's eyes widened, and her impression of this poisonous Prime Minister was refreshed. It seemed that this poisonous Prime Minister was not as ruthless and cruel as she imagined. At least the people had a high opinion of him. After a while, Yong Yi and Ying Yinmin left. Ying Yinmin couldn't help but say, Brother Yang, today's Great Zhou seems to be no weaker than the Central Plains countries, and even better than them in some aspects. At least in the Great Qin, I have never seen every household equipped with colored glaze, and everywhere can see 1,000 kilograms of grain per mu. Quote. That Prime Minister Yang is so powerful, he supports a country by himself, the dignitaries are afraid of him, and the people love him. It is a great fortune for the Empress of Zhou to have such a minister. Yong Yi nodded in agreement. I think so too. The most important thing is that Yong Yi is a handsome, elegant, suave, dignified, graceful, and elegant man. Ying Yin Man. She glanced at Yong Yi with a suspicious look on her face. Is Yong Yi so handsome? Yong Yi sighed. Even I can't compare to him. Ying Yin Man was a little surprised. In her opinion, this mysterious brother Yang was already a very handsome man. Didn't expect that the rumored poisonous Prime Minister would be even more handsome. Yong Yi couldn't help laughing when he saw Ying Yin Man's expression. This girl looks a bit innocent. The two of them wandered around Luoyang for half a day. Back to Yang's house, Wei Zifu was waiting for them. As soon as she saw Yong Yi, Wei Zifu hurriedly said, Prime Minister, someone from Qin said he wanted to see you, said their princess is in your house. Yong Yi was stunned and glanced at Ying Yin Man next to him. Are you the princess of Qin? Ying Yin Man also looked at Yong Yi in astonishment, her eyes wide open, with a look of surprise. Prime Minister, could you be? Wei Zifu next to him looked at Ying Yin Man in surprise. This woman went out with the Prime Minister for a day, but she didn't know the Prime Minister's identity. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows. He never expected that a pen pal he chatted with casually turned out to be the daughter of Ying Zheng. He said with a smile, Yes, I am the vicious, treacherous and cunning poison Prime Minister you mentioned. Ying Yin Man. She felt ashamed. I didn't expect that this brother Yang was the poison Prime Minister in the rumors. She even said bad things about him in front of him. This is too embarrassing. Yong Yi smiled. Let's go and meet these Qin people. They are quite fast. Ying Yin Man hesitated for a while and nodded. After a while, in the hall, Princess Yin Man, you are here. His Majesty is very worried about you. Please come back to Dokkan with us. A man in a black robe said respectfully. Beside him were a group of Dokkan soldiers. Ying Yin Man pouted. You run fast. Quote, the man smiled bitterly. The day you left, His Majesty ordered us to track you down. We went all the way to Dazhou, and then we found out that you were in the newspaper office, and finally, left with Yang Shang. His eyes fell on Yong Yi, who was smiling on the side. He was very afraid of this famous poisonous minister. The man immediately said in a deep voice, I am Zhang Han, and I am here to bring back the princess by His Majesty's order. Please help me, minister. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows. Zhang Han, this guy is a famous general. He glanced at Ying Yinman next to him thoughtfully, and suddenly showed a hint of evil smile. Of course I won't stop you, as long as you are willing to go. Man, Zhang Han's heart sank. Why did this poisonous minister call the princess so intimately? His heart sank. As an aspiring young man, he paid close attention to the famous figures of various countries. Only this Zhou State Yang Shang really made him shudder. A real living devil. Ever since he knew that the princess had left with Yong Yi, he had been worried all the time that the princess would be hurt by Yong Yi. Now it seems that the two of them seem to have some close relationship. But I heard that His Majesty intends to let the princess marry Li Si's son. This is bad. Ying Yin Man on the side also blushed. Man is her pseudonym, used to communicate with Yong Yi. It didn't sound like anything. But now her identity has been exposed. Yong Yi knows her real name Ying Yin Man, and calling her man again is a completely different kind of intimacy. Especially calling her like this in front of the Qin people. It made Ying Yin Man's heart tremble slightly, and she felt shy. Ying Yin Man pursed her lips and looked at Zhang Han. I can go back with you, but I will stay for another day and go back tomorrow. Zhang Han was stunned and looked at Yong Yi with some caution. He frowned. Your Highness, His Majesty asked us to take you back immediately after we found you. Ying Yin Man crossed her arms and shook her head. No, either you listen to me or I won't go back. Zhang Han was stunned and speechless. He was silent for a moment and bowed respectfully. As the princess commands. Yong Yi smiled and glanced at Zhang Han and the soldiers behind him. General Zhang, do you have a place to stay? Zhang Han said in a deep voice. Your Majesty, the Queen of your country has arranged a place to stay. Thank you Yang Guan for your concern. Quote. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows. But he was not too surprised. These people ran to the Great Zhou fully armed, the Empress could not have been unaware. At the moment, the Empress should have acquiesced to their behavior. As long as they don't cause any trouble. After all, it is reasonable for them to come to find the lost princess. Zhang Han bowed to Ying Yinman again, and then led people away. Only Yong Yi and others were left in the hall. Yong Yi looked at Ying Yinman with a smile. The princess is really hiding it. Ying Yinman snorted. The Prime Minister is the same. Yong Yi smiled and walked to the side and sat down. Who does the Qin Emperor want to marry you to? Ying Yinman crossed her arms, walked to the side and sat down carelessly, and her two slender legs swayed. Li Si's son. Yong Yi nodded slightly. That's really not possible. Right. Ying Yin Man's eyes lit up, as if she had met a soulmate, and she hurriedly said, Li Si is so scheming, how can the fourth son be a good thing? He has a gloomy face all day long, and it looks annoying. Besides, I want to be like what is written in The Romance of the West Chamber, at least I have to meet a beloved person before I can get married. Yong Yi's mouth twitched. Good guy, it turns out that he was poisoned. If Ying Zheng knew that his daughter became so rebellious because of reading his book, I wonder if he would come to settle accounts with him. Ying Yin Man on the side tilted his head again, a little curious. Do you think what I said is right, Yang Shang? Or, how does Yang Shang view the matter of marriage? Yong Yi said seriously. Of course, if you meet a good person, you should get married first, and if you meet a noble person, you should establish a career first. Ying Yin Man nodded in agreement. The black and white eyes flickered slightly. That makes sense. Yong Yi smiled. But if I meet a rich woman, I'll get married and start a career. Ying Yin Man. An hour later, the sky gradually darkened. Yang Mansion. Is this the corn? Ying Yin Man looked at the golden corn in front of her with some surprise. Her mouth opened wide. No wonder it's called corn, it looks golden. Yong Yi set up the grill and put the skewers on the side, without looking up. This corn is a high-yield crop like sweet potatoes. Quote, the people of my great Zhou who grow this have already produced nearly 1,000 kilograms per mu. Quote, Ying Yin Man was startled when she heard this. Her eyelids twitched wildly, her mouth slightly opened and closed, and she felt a little numb. Outside, the yield per mu was 1,000 kilograms, but in Dazhou, it was as simple as eating and drinking water. Just as she was dumbfounded, another fragrance came. Ying Yin Man couldn't help but sniff. She smacked her lips, leaned forward, and stared at the barbecue in front of her with her black eyes, without blinking. Why is your barbecue so fragrant? Yong Yi raised the corner of his lips and picked up a small porcelain bottle on the side. These bottles contain some chili powder I made. Ying Yin Man's eyes lit up and asked curiously. Chili. Here, this is it. Yong Yi took out the red chili next to him. This is what I asked someone to find from overseas. Spicy and hot, the hot pot you ate last night was also mixed with this thing. Ying Yin Man was stunned. Hot pot, she suddenly realized that the hot pot last night was indeed extremely spicy. Ying Yin Man pinched the bright red pepper, her beautiful eyes full of curiosity. This pepper is so spicy, much better than those in the world. She suddenly sighed and pursed her lips. I didn't expect that Dazhou would have so many novel things. It's a pity, this time I return to Daqin, it will be difficult to eat these peppers again. Yong Yi glanced at Ying Yin Man with a smile, but didn't say anything. Ying Yin Man was a little discouraged, and she straightened her full chest, revealing her white and delicate skin. Brother Yang, why didn't you say you would give me some? Yong Yi pretended to be surprised at this time. So Man wanted peppers. I really didn't know. Quote, if you agree to one condition, I will give you some tomorrow when you leave. Ying Yin Man was stunned, her beautiful eyebrows slightly frowned, and blinked. What condition? Yong Yi touched his chin. I designed a kind of clothes, but no one can try it. Quote, if Man is willing to help, that would be great. Ying Yin Man's black and white eyes flashed a hint of understanding. She patted her chest. It turns out that this kind of thing is too simple, Brother Yang, just leave it to me. Yong Yi smiled. Really? Ying Yin Man nodded without hesitation. Of course it's true. Isn't it just trying on clothes? But, Brother Yang, you have to get me more peppers and fruits tomorrow, and bring them back to me. Yong Yi said with a smile. No problem. Wait a minute, I'll get you some clothes to change. Quote. After a while. Here, these are them. Yong Yi put a neat and clean short skirt in front of Ying Yin Man. Ying Yin Man was stunned, staring blankly at the clothes in front of her. What is this? Yong Yi raised his eyebrows. A skirt and a top, and a pair of stockings, you can try them. Quote. Ying Yin Man's fair and pretty face turned slightly red. She carefully pointed to the clothes with very little fabric next to her. What is this? Yong Yi looked serious. This is underwear, worn with this skirt. Ying Yin Man's eyes widened. Brother Yang, is this a little short? Yong Yi shook his head, and a serious look appeared on his angular face. It's not short, you won't wear it out, right? You're just trying the clothes on for me. Quote. There are only 2 of us in this room, what are you afraid of? Ying Yin Man's head was a little confused. I always felt that Yong Yi's words sounded a little strange. She pursed her lips. Well, it seems so. Yong Yi smiled. I designed this dress carefully. No one has worn it yet. You are the first one. The feeling after you put it on is very important to me. So, don't have any other ideas. You are just helping me. Don't you want to help me? Ying Yin Man hesitated, but when she heard Yong Yi's words, she subconsciously couldn't think of refusing. After all, Yong Yi was very good to her. Ying Yin Man glanced at Yong Yi, who was righteous, and whispered. Of course I am willing, then I will try it on. If it doesn't look good when worn, Brother Yang, don't laugh at me. Quote. Yong Yi thought to himself that your long legs are so beautiful with black stockings. How can they not look good? From the first time he saw Ying Yinman, he noticed her long legs. It's a pity that these long legs are not wearing black stockings. After an incense stick, Yong Yi was thinking whether this girl didn't know how to wear clothes and whether he should go in to help button a button when a crisp voice mixed with shyness rang out. Brother Yang, isn't this very strange? Yong Yi raised his eyebrows and turned around. What caught his eye was a girl wearing a thin white top and a pleated skirt. The girl's long black and smooth hair was tied into a cross bun, which was commonly used by Qin women. With her shy and beautiful face, she looked like a classical lady, charming and noble. Her towering chest supported the lady's shirt to a full arc. Her slender and fair legs were wrapped in black and shiny stockings, revealing a fair and absolute area between her skirt. The perfect fusion of classical elegance and modern cuteness made her look beautiful and attractive. Yong Yi's heart was slightly moved. It was obviously just an ordinary shirt, short skirt and black stockings, but when worn on Ying Yinmen, it highlighted her perfect figure. Her long legs were wrapped in black stockings, which further highlighted the whiteness, tenderness and slenderness of her legs. Seeing Yong Yi staring at her legs, Ying Yinmen shyly put her legs together. The first time she exposed some of her skin in front of the opposite gender, her heart trembled slightly. After a while, Yong Yi finally sighed deeply. Ying Yinmen was stunned, biting her lips carefully, her dark eyes flickering. Brother Yang, what's wrong? Doesn't it look good? Yong Yi coughed lightly. He stared at Ying Yinmen with burning eyes. Of course not. I just think Man showed up too late. Only Man can wear this dress to show all its advantages. These stockings are made for Man. Ying Yinmen blushed when Yong Yi praised her. The corners of her rosy lips couldn't help but curl up, and her white neck was raised. Brother Yang, you are too kind. Ying Yinmen was very happy. She walked to Yong Yi and sat down. Her two slender legs were placed side by side, and her white and smooth legs were like jade. Yong Yi smiled. How does this stocking feel to wear? Ying Yinmen blinked her black and white eyes. Very smooth, very comfortable. Brother Yang, you are a genius. Yong Yi twitched his lips. He said without hesitation, since Man likes it, I will give you a few sets. By the way, these barbecues are ready, and there are some fresh sauces. How do you taste them? Ying Yinmen nodded, took a look at the various delicacies in front of her, and suddenly felt a little depressed. A trace of sadness appeared in her beautiful eyes, and she sighed. I will go back to Dakan tomorrow. I don't know if my father will force me to marry Li Si's son. I'm afraid I will never taste this kind of thing again. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows and smiled. If your highness wants to eat it in the future, I can send these peppers and seasonings to you. Quote. Ying Yinmen shook her head, her black and white eyes staring straight at Yong Yi. Brother Yang, don't you know that different moods will give different tastes to the same food? Yong Yi's mouth twitched. Here it comes, the girl's resentment is overflowing again. Ying Yinmen's eyes suddenly flashed. She moved forward, looking forward to it. Brother Yang, you are known as the #1 poisoner in the Great Zhou dynasty, is there no way to help me solve this problem? Yong Yi's eyelids twitched. Why did this girl suddenly think of asking him for advice? He shook his head. My strategies are all worthless poison strategies, Your Highness Princess may have asked the wrong person. It's okay to let him fight the enemy and govern the country. What strategy can there be for refusing marriage? Isn't this a joke? Ying Yinmen stared straight at Yong Yi. Yi. As long as the plan works, why not a vicious plan? This girl looks gentle, but she is actually a madman. He felt helpless and couldn't help but tease. Princess, do you really want to ask for a plan? Ying Yinmen bit her lip. As long as I have a reason to postpone this marriage, any plan is fine. Quote. Brother Yang is unwilling to help me. Yong Yi patted his thigh and said without hesitation. Isn't it easy to postpone this marriage? Your Highness and I have known each other for more than a year. How could you not be willing to help Your Highness? Ying Yinmen's heart was lifted and he said quickly. Please teach me, Brother Yang. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows and said with a smile. You can tell the Emperor of Qin that you have already secretly decided to spend your life with someone, right? If Li Si's son knew, would he still accept the marriage? Ying Yinmen was stunned, and then his face showed excitement. 0. That's true. Tit. She suddenly looked depressed again. My father is so smart, I'm afraid he can't hide such a reason from him. Quote. Yong Yi leaned back with a smile on his face. Then why don't you just get married in private? Ying Yinmen was shocked. her face turned red to her neck, and she said with a chuckle. How can this be possible? Besides, I don't have anyone I like, how can I get married in private? Yong Yi said seriously. The counselor has entered the game with his body, this small favor, I can't really help the princess. Ying Yin Man's face turned red. She looked at Yong Yi in surprise. Yong Yi looked at Ying Yin Man with a smile. He was actually just teasing Ying Yin Man and gave her such a bad idea. After all, he was a minister of the Great Zhou, and it was a bit inappropriate for him to interfere in the marriage of the princess of the Great Qin. Just give a dirty trick to make Ying Yin Man give up. Ying Yin Man was silent for a while, and suddenly spoke. Then all trouble brother Yi. Yong Yi. No, didn't you really agree? He just said it casually. After Ying Yin Man said this, she seemed to be more relaxed. Her fair and pretty face was red and hot, but her eyes were particularly firm. Ying Yin Man stared at Yong Yi with burning eyes, as if to poke into his heart. I have read Dream of Red Mansions, and Romance of the West Chamber, several times. Although Yin Man is in the palace, she also yearns for a vigorous relationship. If you can't be with the person you love, what's the difference between you and a muddle-headed puppet? Instead of going back and being forced to marry Li Si's son, it's better to give your body to brother Yi whom I admire and worship. After Ying Yin Man finished speaking, her face was red to her ears. But she still took 2 steps and approached Yong Yi. Yong Yi's eyelids were twitching wildly. I came closer. These inexperienced girls really can't be joked casually. This, Ying Yin Man really took it seriously. He glanced at the princess from Qin. She was of medium height, but had a pair of extremely long white legs, which were now tied up by black and shiny stockings, making her look even whiter, softer, plumper and more charming. Her soft lines were like silk drawn by the most dexterous hands, smooth and slender, and her radiant skin had almost no pores, as smooth as a piece of jade. Yong Yi's heart was slightly moved. Although he was not a leg control, he had to say that the princess's legs were really top-notch. He took a deep breath. The girl said so, if he didn't get up at this time, he would be worse than an animal. If you enter the game with your body, you can enter the chrysanthemum with your body. He then picked up Ying Yinman by the waist, and Ying Yinman moaned and subconsciously wrapped her arms around Yong Yi's neck. Yong Yi then walked in. The next day, Ying Yin Man limped to the carriage and reluctantly said goodbye to Yong Yi. Yong Yi said goodbye to Ying Yin Man under the vigilant eyes of Zhang Han and others. Half a month later, Zongtai Palace. Father, the princess is back. Ying Yin Man respectfully bowed to Ying Zheng. Ying Zheng was wearing a black robe with wide sleeves and looked at Ying Yin Man expressionlessly. Ying Yin Man felt a little scared. But at this time, he could only bite the bullet. After a while, Ying Zheng said slowly, you still know to come back. Ying Yin Man breathed a sigh of relief. As long as the father speaks, it will be fine. She said with a smile. The princess is the father's daughter. Of course she knows to go home. Ying Zheng was silent for a while, and there was nothing he could do about his most beloved daughter. He said in a deep voice. Just because you are dissatisfied with Li Si's son, you resigned without authorization. Do you know that this move will damage the reputation of the royal family if it is spread out? Ying Yinman stuck out her tongue. Father, I know I was wrong. Ying Zheng closed his eyes slightly and said slowly. You should stay in the palace and reflect on yourself. As for your marriage, I have decided to marry you to Li Si's son Li Yu. You two are also well matched. Ying Yinman took a breath. Father, I have already secretly decided to spend my life with someone. Silence. The palace suddenly became dead silent. The maids who were waiting beside them all lowered their heads, not daring to breathe. Ying Zheng raised his sword-like eyebrows, and a trace of astonishment appeared in his eyes. He looked at Ying Yin Man in shock. Secretly get married? Who? Ying Yin Man gritted her teeth. Her voice fell. The palace fell into dead silence. Ying Zheng was silent for a long time, he clenched his fists, and a trace of anger rose in his heart. With his wisdom, he certainly would not think that such a dirty trick was thought up by own daughter. It was most likely Yong Yi's plan. Scoundrel, too scoundrel. Ying Zheng said lightly, you use this trick to deceive me, do you think I will believe it? Ying Yin Man gritted her teeth. Father, you can find a maid to verify the identity of the prince. Quote. My son and Yilang are in love, please don't force me. Ying Zheng was silent. He was in a state of confusion. Of course he believed what his daughter said. That was why he was even more angry. Yong Yi's trick was too mean. My daughter was probably so stupid that she didn't even know she was being deceived. After a while, Ying Zheng rubbed his brows, with a hint of helplessness in his eyes. Go down, and be confined for 3 months. Ying Yinmin was stunned, and then said happily. Yes, father. Confined for 3 months. Doesn't this mean that she doesn't have to get married? You know, father was planning to marry her off next month. After Ying Yinmin left, Ying Zheng snorted coldly. I didn't expect that his daughter would get entangled with Yong Yi. It's true that he admired Yong Yi, but Yong Yi actually came up with such a mean trick for his daughter, which really made him angry. He slapped the table, and the memorials on the table trembled. The whole hall was silent. Ying Zheng gritted his teeth and sighed helplessly. This plan was shameless, but he really had no other choice. Ying Yin Man was so resistant to Li Yu, could he really force his daughter to marry him? But Yong Yi actually intervened, which really made him angry. He stood for a while with his hands behind his back, and then said to the waiter beside him. Go tell Li Si that Princess Yin Man's marriage is not considered for the time being. Great Zhou, Qin is thousands of miles away from my Great Zhou, but Yongqing can actually hook up with the Princess of Qin. It really makes me amazed. Wu Zhao looked at Yong Yi calmly. Yong Yi smacked his lips. I always feel that the Empress's words are a bit sour. He cupped his hands to the Empress. Your Majesty, I didn't know she was actually a princess of Qin. Before this, I just kept in touch with her. If you really count, she is at most my adopted sister. Wu Zhao snorted lightly, leaned back on the dragon chair, spread her hands on the sides of the chair, and her full breasts held up the dragon robe, showing the charm of a mature woman. I don't care what her relationship with you is. The second prince of the Ming dynasty is getting married, you should leave tomorrow. Yong Yi was stunned. He almost forgot about it. Yes, Your Majesty. Quote. Yong Yi said immediately. Wu Zhao hesitated for a while, then suddenly said. In the Ming dynasty, don't mess with women randomly. Yong Yi was stunned and a little confused. Wu Zhao suddenly realized that she seemed to be too lenient. She lowered her eyes and said lightly. You go out to represent the face of the Great Zhou. If you mess with any woman again, won't it be the face of my Great Zhou? Besides, Sanyang is very interested in you, don't make her sad. Quote. Yong Yi raised his eyebrows. I always felt that the Empress's words were not sincere. He wanted to ask whether it was because of Wu Mingyu or the Empress herself. 3 days later, Daming, Yong Yi, the minister of Zhou, greets the prince. Yong Yi smiled and bowed to Zhu Biao in front of him. He was also very curious about this prince who was known as the most stable in history. Zhu Biao looked at Yong Yi in front of him carefully and was a little surprised. If he hadn't seen the first poisoner of the Great Zhou with his own eyes, he couldn't imagine that this poisonous minister who used countless vicious strategies was so young and handsome. It was impossible to see that the means would be so vicious. Zhu Biao smiled slightly. The name of Yang Shang is well known. Quote. Today's opinion is really well deserved. Quote. My father is waiting for Prime Minister Yang in the palace. Please come to the palace for a chat. Yong Yi was stunned and raised his eyebrows. Zhu Yuanzhang wants to see him. Could this be the reason why Zhu Biao specially invited him before? Yong Yi pondered for a moment, then said seriously. Please lead the way, Prince. Half an hour later. Function hall. Yong Yi bowed. Yong Yi, the minister of the Great Zhou, greets His Majesty the Emperor of the Great Ming. Not far from him, a tall old man with mottled hair sat on a chair. He had a rough face, a pair of sharp eyes like a tiger, and his weathered face was full of unfathomable majesty and domineering. Zhu Yuanzhang looked at Yong Yi for a while, and suddenly smiled. Come here, give a seat to Minister Yang. The title of the first poisoner of the Great Zhou is well known even to an old man like me who is half buried in the ground. Quote. If you ask me, you are not the best poisoner in the Great Zhou, you can even be called the best poisoner in the world. Yong Yi was not shy and walked to Zhu Yuanzhang and sat down. He was also quite curious about the famous Hongwu Emperor. Yong Yi smiled and said, Your Majesty, you are too kind. It's just a little luck. Zhu Yuanzhang laughed and his gray beard trembled. What a luck. He looked at Yong Yi with a smile. Yang, you come to our daiming to be an official, how about we make you a duke? You can pick any of our daughters, we will marry you whichever one you like. Zhu Biao on the side was stunned, never expecting Zhu Yuanzhang to say such a thing. Is his father serious? Yong Yi, is this old Zhu so direct in snatching people? He cupped his hands. Thank you for your kindness, your majesty. Once I am a minister of the Great Zhou, I will be a member of the Great Zhou for the rest of my life. Zhu Yuanzhang looked at Yong Yi with some pity. He really wanted to keep such a talent in the daiming. Biao was too kind, he should have such a black-hearted and vicious confidant to assist him. He narrowed his eyes and slightly opened his beard. What a loyal minister. In that case, I won't force you. However, the Ming dynasty and the Zhou dynasty are friendly countries now. I'll ask you a few questions, don't force yourself to answer. Yong Yi said calmly. Your Majesty, please speak. He didn't know what Zhu Yuanzhang was going to do, but since he had already arrived in the Ming dynasty, he would adapt to the situation. He didn't believe that Zhu Yuanzhang could do anything to him. Zhu Yuanzhang stroked his beard, and a smile flashed across his weathered eyes. Do you think our Ming dynasty has any shortcomings? As soon as he said this, the hall suddenly became quiet. The Jinyiwei such as Mao Shang who were serving in the corner were all a little stunned, but they quickly lowered their heads, their eyes looking at their noses looking at their hearts, like sculptures. Zhu Biao stared at Zhu Yuanzhang in amazement. Old Zhu just asked him to call Yong Yi. He never expected that the old dwarf would actually ask Yong Yi such a question. Yong Yi is a minister of the Great Zhou. The hall was silent. Yong Yi was also a little stunned. He didn't expect that old Zhu would ask him for advice. He glanced at Zhu Yuanzhang, who was smiling, calmly, and suddenly reacted. Zhu Yuanzhang didn't care who he was a minister of. He asked such a question just to test his weight, and didn't care how he would answer. Yong Yi thought for a moment, and suddenly a smile appeared on his lips. Since old Zhu asked him, he didn't mind making some poisonous plans to accelerate the demise of the Ming dynasty in advance. Yong Yi was calm and upright like a pine tree. Quote. The hall was silent. Zhu Biao and others looked at Yong Yi in confusion. This kid really dared to say it. Zhu Yuanzhang was also stunned. He was actually just asking casually when he was in a good mood, but he didn't expect Yong Yi to really answer. According to common sense, he should be vague at this time and get away with it. He waved his hand, signaling all the maids and eunuchs around to go down. After a while, only Zhu Yuanzhang, Zhu Biao, and Jinyiwei such as Mao Shang were left in the hall. Zhu Yuanzhang said with a smile, Minister Yang, tell me. Yong Yi pondered. In my opinion, there are many things that are not done well in the current Ming dynasty. Zhu Yuanzhang was stunned, his eyes narrowed, and his sharp eyes seemed to pierce into Yong Yi's eyes. He started from scratch from a beggar to an emperor. All the rules and regulations of the Ming dynasty were formulated by him personally. In his opinion, the Ming dynasty was his masterpiece. But in Yong Yi's eyes, there were so many things that were not done well. Could this kid be talking nonsense? Zhu Biao, Mao Shang and others took a breath and looked at each other. No, this Yong Yi really thinks the Ming dynasty is the Great Zhou. Zhu Yuanzhang was silent for a while. He was a little unsure of Yong Yi's thoughts now. Is he talking nonsense on purpose, or is he trying to set a trap for him secretly? Zhu Yuanzhang frowned, glanced at Yong Yi who was smiling, and finally couldn't help his curiosity. Anyway, he just wanted to listen to Yong Yi's ideas, but he didn't necessarily have to do it. Ricket, Yong Yi raised his lips, his eyes deep. First of all, it's the issue of the rewards for the royal princes. As far as I know, in the current Ming dynasty, the princes seem to still be in Yingtian. Zhu Yuanzhang's eyes narrowed, and he leaned forward slightly. What do you mean? Yong Yi smiled and said, Your Majesty fought against the Yuan people, drove away some of them, and established the Ming dynasty, but the Yuan people in the north are still a threat to the Ming dynasty. If the court only relies on local troops without the protection of the kings, I am afraid that the Ming dynasty will be unstable. Zhu Biao was surprised. Yong Yi's words are not without reason. It seems that this person has studied the Ming dynasty very deeply. Zhu Yuanzhang was shocked. Yong Yi's ideas coincide with his. It's just that he hasn't figured out how to distribute his sons. He said subconsciously. What do you think should be done? After saying that, he realized that Yong Yi was a minister of the great Zhou dynasty. It was already quite strange that he could point out the shortcomings of the Ming dynasty. Could he give suggestions to help him solve them? Yong Yi was waiting for Zhu Yuanzhang to say this, and said in a deep voice. This is very simple. We just need to set up 3 lines of defense for the Yuan people in the north. Zhu Biao, Zheng and others were dumbfounded. Is this guy from the Ming dynasty or the Zhou dynasty? Asking you for a strategy, you really tell me. They looked at each other, not understanding Yong Yi's thoughts for a while. Even Zhu Yuanzhang was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect Yong Yi to be so frank. He really wanted to give a strategy. Just when everyone was stunned, Yong Yi continued. The first of these 3 lines of defense is the Great Wall line of defense. With the Great Wall as the boundary, from west to east, the kings are in theft, and the king's fiefs are connected, forming a solid line of defense. The second is the Yellow River defense line and the Yangtze River defense line. With these 2 natural barriers as the line, upstream, CPC will infect the kings. If the Yuan people in the north want to go south, they will have to pass through 3 solid lines of defense. The kings hold military power and protect the Ming dynasty. In this way, no matter how rampant the Yuan people in the north are, it is extremely difficult to threaten the court. Quote. His words fell. Everyone gasped and looked at Yong Yi in shock. They felt that what Yong Yi said made sense. No, is this guy really giving advice to the Ming dynasty? Is this the living king of hell of the Zhou dynasty? It's clearly a living bodhisattva. Zhu Yuanzhang's eyes shrank, and he stared at Yong Yi in astonishment. His heart was in turmoil. Yong Yi's words made him see through the fog. He had not let his sons go to the vassal state, and he was also considering these issues. It's just that he hasn't thought of a perfect solution yet. Unexpectedly, he got it from a foreign envoy today. Is this guy really helping him find a solution, or does he want to do something secretly? Zhu Yuanzhang was a little confused for a while. He couldn't figure it out. The 3 lines of defense given by Yong Yi are all wise strategies. The hall was quiet for a moment. Zhu Biao suddenly said. As Yang Shang said, the kings are in theft in various places and hold military power. Isn't it a hindrance to the court? The 7 Kingdoms rebellion in the Han dynasty was only a few decades ago. He looked at Yong Yi vigilantly. In his opinion, Yong Yi's strategy of enfeoffment of the kings is good. But this method also has hidden dangers. Maybe this is Yong Yi's purpose. Yong Yi smiled. Who do you think is at fault for the 7 Kingdoms rebellion? Zhu Biao said without hesitation. Of course it is the 7 Kingdoms. Yong Yi curled his lips and looked at Zhu Yuanzhang, who was thinking. What do you think, Your Majesty? Zhu Yuanzhang pondered for a moment, and thought flashed in his eyes. It's not the 7 Kingdoms, nor the feudal division, but the emperor's lack of grace. When Emperor Jing was the crown prince, he set up a trap to kill the Prince of Wu when he was young, and the disaster was sown. Later, when Emperor Jing ascended the throne, he believed Chao Kuo's words and cut the land of the 7 Kingdoms. How can the princes not rebel if the emperor is so mean and unkind? Zhu Biao was stunned and fell into deep thought. If Yong Yi said this, he would be half believing and half doubting. But this was said by Zhu Yuanzhang, so he had to think carefully. Yong Yi's mouth curled up slightly. He fell into the trap. Old Zhu's small peasant mentality is really serious. Old Zhu still believes in the family monarchy, and outsiders are not trustworthy at all. He just deliberately asked about the 7 Kingdoms rebellion. Of course, there is a basis for it. Yong Yi had read the record of Ming Tezu Shilu in his previous life. In a certain year of Hongwu, Zhu Yuanzhang talked with the Crown Prince Zhu Biao about what he had learned recently. Zhu Biao told Zhu Yuanzhang that he had recently read Han Shu and studied the 7 Kingdoms rebellion. Zhu Yuanzhang asked, "Who is right?" Zhu Biao said, "The 7 Kingdoms are wrong." Zhu Yuanzhang said that when Emperor Jing was still the crown prince, he often played the game to kill the Prince of Wu to provoke his resentment. After Emperor Jing ascended the throne, he believed in Chao Kuo's words and rashly reduced the land of the 7 Kingdoms, which was the root cause of the 7 Kingdoms rebellion. Emperors like Zhu Yuanzhang, who started from scratch, overcame all difficulties, and finally established the huge Ming Empire. Such heroes, who were born in a humble family, are often more confident in doing things. Zhu Yuanzhang believed that he had found the root cause of the Seven Kingdoms rebellion, and was confident that he could overcome this problem. So this is also the fundamental reason why Zhu Yuanzhang enfeoffed the kings. Because he doesn't think there is a problem with the enfeoffment system. And now, he proposed enfeoffment of the kings, which is just right and just in line with Zhu Yuanzhang's wishes. Because Zhu Yuanzhang has never trusted outsiders from the beginning to the end. In Zhu Yuanzhang's eyes, only his own people will never betray the Ming dynasty. So, Yong Yi is sure that Zhu Yuanzhang will definitely not reject his three-line enfeoffment strategy. Even if this strategy was proposed by him, an outsider. There was silence in the hall for a while. Yong Yi smiled and continued Zhu Yuanzhang's words. The emperor is seldom gracious, so his subordinates are dissatisfied. But what if the emperor is generous? Everyone was stunned and looked at Yong Yi in amazement. Zhu Yuanzhang was thoughtful. What kind of generous? He always felt that Yong Yi's words touched his heart. Even the problems he had thought about but couldn't figure out were suddenly clear under Yong Yi's description. A smile flashed in Yong Yi's eyes. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. It's very simple, just treat all the royal children well. Your Majesty's eldest son is the crown prince, and the rest of the princes are princes, with official uniforms of the same district. Below the prince, his eldest son inherits the title of prince, and the rest of the sons are all made princes, with official uniforms of the second rank. The eldest son of the prince inherits the title of prince, and the rest of the sons are made generals of the state, with official uniforms of the third rank. The sons of the generals of the state are all made generals of the state, with official uniforms of the fourth rank. The sons of the generals of the state are all made generals of the state, with official uniforms of the fifth rank. The sons of the generals of the state are all made lieutenants of the state, with official uniforms of the sixth rank. The sons of the lieutenants of the state are all made lieutenants of the state, with official uniforms of the seventh rank. The sons of the lieutenants of the state are all made lieutenants of the state, with official uniforms of the eighth rank. Quote, General Zhengguo to Lieutenant Fuguo are considered as descended, while Lieutenant Fengguo and below are no longer descended. Even after 10 generations, they are still supported and their titles are all Lieutenant Fengguo unchanged. The hall was silent. Everyone looked at Yong Yi in shock. They didn't expect Yong Yi to actually come up with a complete plan. And this title system, you have studied the Ming dynasty carefully, right? This title system was just developed by Zhu Yuanzhang not long ago, and he hasn't figured out how to arrange it. Yong Yi used it directly. Zhu Yuanzhang stared at Yong Yi in amazement, his heart was like a raging sea. After careful consideration, this system actually perfectly fits his ideas. Is Yong Yi really making suggestions for his Ming dynasty? There was a moment of silence in the hall. Zhu Yuanzhang looked deep, and said slowly, this method is indeed a great favor from the emperor, and the descendants of my Ming dynasty will be grateful to you. Yong Yi smiled slightly. You should thank your majesty. I am just the first small suggestion. Zhu Yuanzhang took a deep breath and pierced Yong Yi with sharp eyes. Prime Minister Yang's strategy is indeed brilliant. He is worthy of being the first ruthless scholar of the Ming dynasty. However, I am a little confused. You are a minister of the Great Zhou, why do you want to make plans for the Ming dynasty? The atmosphere in the hall was solemn. Everyone looked at Yong Yi in confusion. A foreign minister, but he gave the Ming dynasty a plan, which was not right no matter how you looked at it. Moreover, this plan did not sound problematic. What was Yong Yi thinking? Yong Yi looked calm. He knew Zhu Yuanzhang would definitely be suspicious. Facing Zhu Yuanzhang was different from facing a fool like Qianlong. If such a hero gave a poisonous plan, Zhu Yuanzhang would definitely see it. But only such a seemingly wise plan, which actually had endless troubles, could truly harm the Ming dynasty. He cupped his hands and smiled. The Yuan people are the enemy of all countries, not just the Ming dynasty. The Mongol Empire is vast and vast. If the Ming dynasty can build 3 lines of defense to stop the Yuan people in the north, it will also be good for our Great Zhou. What's more, if the Ming dynasty stops the Yuan people in the north, the Central Plains will be free from the invasion of the Yuan people, and our Great Zhou will not need to send out a single soldier. So why can't Yong make suggestions? The Mongol Empire in this world is quite powerful, and the Mongol Emperor is Genghis Khan. The territory of the Mongol Empire is vast, and it was a part of the Mongol Empire that once occupied the land of the Ming dynasty. The hall was suddenly quiet. Zhu Biao, Mao Shang and others looked at each other. What this poison scholar said seems to make some sense. Zhu Yuanzhang frowned. He always felt that Yong Yi seemed to be untrue, but even with his shrewdness, he could not detect any problems. Could it be that he really thought too much? Zhu Yuanzhang pondered for a moment and suddenly laughed. What Yang Shang said makes sense. The foreign races are powerful, and the countries in the Central Plains should stick together. These Yuan dogs are eyeing my Central Plains covetously, and Yang Zheng's strategy is even more powerful for my Ming dynasty. It is also a convenient thing for Ming dynasty to block the Yuan people for Dazhou. In this case, I have to thank Yang Shang. Yong Yi shook his head, with a sincere face. Dazhou and Ming dynasty are friendly countries, and it is my honor to be able to make suggestions for Da Ming dynasty. Da Ming blocked the Yuan people, and my Dazhou blocked the Turks. The countries joined hands to block the foreign races outside. This is exactly Yang's little wish. Since my wish has been fulfilled, why should I thank you? Zhu Yuanzhang stroked his beard, and his tiger eyes were full of smiles. Well said, well said. It's really a pity that Yang Shang and I met too late. Quote. Except for the wedding of the concubine, Yong Yi is not in a hurry to leave. We still need to have a good chat with Yong Yi. Zhu Biao took a breath, looking shocked. Zhu Yuanzhang's affection for Yong Yi has far exceeded that of ordinary monarchs and ministers. On weekdays, his father has never been so polite to those ministers of the Ming dynasty. Yong Yi is too valued by his father. However, thinking about the 3 lines of defense just now and the strategy of favoring the royal family, he was still a little surprised. This Yong Yi is indeed a great talent. Mao Shang was even more dumbfounded. As Zhu Yuanzhang's personal guard, he has followed Zhu Yuanzhang for many years and has never seen Zhu Yuanzhang so polite. Zhu Yuanzhang is a ruthless iron-blooded emperor. Yong Yi is really capable. Yong Yi smiled slightly. Zhu Yuanzhang wanted to talk to him, and of course he would not refuse. He also had some strategies, such as reversing history, that he wanted to share with Zhu Yuanzhang. A few days later, Yong Yi left Daming Function Hall. Zhu Biao was a little confused. Father, do you really want to use Yong Yi's strategy? Zhu Yuanzhang put down the memorial in his hand and said slowly. Why not? Don't you think his strategy is useful? Zhu Biao was stunned and smiled bitterly. It is indeed useful, but he is an outsider after all. It is hard to say whether there are other thoughts hidden in these strategies. Zhu Yuanzhang glanced at Zhu Biao. Then have you found the problem in his strategy? Zhu Biao paused and scratched his head awkwardly. Quote. He has indeed been studying Yong Yi's strategy carefully these days. He doesn't believe that it is really as simple as Yong Yi said, just for the Ming dynasty to be able to stop the invasion of those northerners. He studied for a long time, but he didn't have any clues. Because no matter how he studied, he couldn't see any problems. It can even be said that Yong Yi's strategy is perfect. Except that the power of the local vassal kings is a bit too much, there are no other shortcomings for the time being. Zhu Yuanzhang glared at Zhu Biao unhappily. That's it. Do you think your father is stupid? Will he believe any foreign minister's words? We have found Song Lian, Li Shanchang and others, who have been analyzing Yong Yi's strategy these days. After analyzing it over and over again, there is no problem at all. Even if the vassal kings may become powerful, as long as the emperors of future generations work hard to govern, the vassal kings will only play a protective role. And now, the 3 lines of defense can at least protect the stability of our Ming dynasty for hundreds of years. As long as these vassal kings are not all useless, the Yuan people in the north will not have the opportunity to invade our Ming dynasty. That's why Wei Kai plans to use his strategy. Rise. Don't use people you doubt, and don't doubt people you use. No matter how cunning Yong Yi is, he is just one person. We have gathered all the ministers of the Ming dynasty, and we can't see where there is a problem with his strategy. Do you think he is smarter than your father and all the ministers of the Ming dynasty? Zhu Biao shrank his neck and smiled bitterly. Father is right. Maybe I am too indecisive. Zhu Yuanzhang snorted. Your worries are not unnecessary. But, we believe that his strategy is indeed correct. It is said that Yong Yi's strategies are all poisonous. But now it seems that this person is far more intelligent than ordinary people, and has foresight which is incomparable to ordinary people. He is a real pillar of the country. It's a pity. How great would it be if he was a minister of the Ming dynasty? Zhu Biao nodded in agreement. Regardless of whether he was wary of Yong Yi, he had to admit it. Yong Yi's talent is indeed extraordinary. This genius is rare in the world. Zhu Yuanzhang suddenly showed a trace of cunning. Biao, your second brother will be a vassal after his marriage. Let's take advantage of this time to thoroughly implement this system of title distribution and announce to the world that this strategy for stabilizing the country and protecting the nation was offered by Yong Yi of the Great Zhou. What do you think? Zhu Biao was stunned, not knowing what was going on. Father, this move is... Zhu Yuanzhang glared at him unhappily, and then a cunning look flashed in his eyes. Guess, if the world knew that the Prime Minister of the Great Zhou offered a strategy for stabilizing the country and protecting the nation to ensure the eternal prosperity of the Great Ming, what would the world think? What would the people of the Great Zhou think? What would the ministers of the Great Zhou think? What would the Empress think? Zhu Biao was stunned, and then reacted. His eyes widened, and he looked at Zhu Yuanzhang in astonishment. Father, are you deliberately making people think that Yong Yi has some relationship with my Ming dynasty, so as to sow discord between him and the ruler and ministers of the Great Zhou? Zhu Yuanzhang laughed, stroked his beard, and a shrewd look flashed in his eyes. My own minister ran over and offered a brilliant plan to the neighboring country. Even if there is a saying that my Ming dynasty can help the Great Zhou dynasty block the Yuan people in the north, who can guarantee that the Empress will be happy? Even if she can suppress her suspicion for a moment. Quote, but people in the world will not think so. They will only think that Yong Yi has a close relationship with my Ming dynasty. With the discussion of people in the world, can the Empress still sit still? As long as my Ming dynasty plants a seed of suspicion in her. Quote, over time, who knows if it will become the key to the disintegration of their monarch and ministers. Zhu Biao took a breath of cold air. My father's move is really insidious. Even if the Empress is calm, as long as this matter ferments, it will be like eating a fly. Just wait for it to explode one day, and Yong Yi and the Empress will fall apart. He looked at Zhu Yuanzhang in amazement. Father, your move is too high. But, isn't it a bit unkind for us to do this? After all, they just offered us a plan. Zhu Yuanzhang stroked his beard and looked at his son deeply. What's the matter with being authentic or not? As long as it's good for the Ming dynasty. A genius like Yong Yi must not be allowed to stay in the Great Zhou dynasty. If one day, he and the Empress fall out, then the Ming dynasty can just snatch him away. I really hope that he is a minister of the Ming dynasty. 3 days later, Zhu Yuanzhang quickly determined the strategy of enfeoffment of the kings, and issued an imperial decree to first enfeoff Qin Wang Zudi, Yan Wang Zudi and others, and set up the title inheritance system in the name of the ancestral system. In front of the civil and military officials, he mentioned that these strategies were offered by Yong Yi. For a time, the news that Yong Yi offered advice to the Ming dynasty swept across the countries. Qin, you just harmed my daughter, and now you are going to the Ming dynasty to offer advice. Ying Zheng frowned and pondered in silence. He carefully analyzed the Ming dynasty's system of enfeoffment and title inheritance, and did not find any problems in it. Could it be that Yong Yi has changed his character? He didn't actually cheat the Ming dynasty. Tang dynasty. This feudal system is very suitable for the national conditions of the Ming dynasty, as if it was tailor-made for the Ming dynasty. Li Shimin looked at the map hanging in front of him, amazed, and admired it. The 3 lines of defense are like 3 walls to keep the enemy out. Yong Yi is a very talented military man. The ministers looked at each other. Chengsun Wuji smiled bitterly. I don't understand, such a beautiful and extremely suitable strategy for the Ming dynasty, could it be that Yong Yi specially presented it to Zhu Yuanzhang? But why is this? Does he not want the position of the minister in the Great Zhou anymore, and want to go to the Ming dynasty? So he showed goodwill to the Ming dynasty. Fang Xuanling, Du Ruhui and others frowned and pondered in silence. Li Shimin was also puzzled. There is nothing wrong with the strategies proposed to Zhu Yuanzhang. What is Yong Yi thinking? Is it just to resist the Yuan people? Is he so kind? Fang Xuanling stroked his beard. I think Yong Yi seems to have some plans, but there is no problem with this strategy. At least, it will not harm the Ming dynasty. This person's actions are really puzzling. Everyone nodded slightly. They really don't understand. The living devil is kind. Da Zhou, Yang Mansion, Prime Minister, you are back. Wei Zifu was quite sensible and changed into a maid outfit that Yong Yi had prepared for her, and brought tea. Yong Yi drank a sip of tea and was about to tease Wei Zifu. A maid came in and said respectfully, Prime Minister, His Majesty invites you. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.